I'm Emily. Jake, my older brother by 2 years, is a scientist. He's living his dream of working in research and seems really happy with it, even though he's busy all day. Our son, Mike, is 3 years old, just like Jake. He loves watching and trying out new things. Right now, he's really into the goldfish he caught at the fall festival. Our daughter, Sarah, is 1 year old. She loves to eat, and her chubby cheeks are just so cute. She brings so much happiness to our home. Life is pretty good for our regular family, except for one thing. Emily, what are we having for dinner tonight? Mother-in-law. Just as I was trying to calm down my crying daughter and finish cooking dinner, the doorbell rang without warning. My mother-in-law strolled into our house, as she often does around this time. While it's not always on the same day each week, her visits are frequent enough that my son hardly even glances away from the TV. My goodness, fried food again. That's not good, too oily. You should take better care of Jake's stomach when he comes home tired from work. It's not good for the grandkids either. But Mike really enjoys it. Well, that's because you only give him junk. Look, I've made a creamy vegetable stew and minestrone for you. It's important for the kids to get used to Western food from an early age. My mother-in-law began setting the table with the large containers of creamy stew and minestrone she brought. It's a lot, enough to last for at least 3 days, and I felt a bit disheartened just looking at the stew, which was mostly carrots and cabbage. Come on, snap out of it. I'll take the food you made home with me, so go ahead and pack it up. It's not tasty, but we can't waste food. This was routine. Last time she visited unexpectedly, she replaced my clam chowder with her own fried chicken. She left without even sparing a glance at her grandchildren, clutching the still warm container. Once the front door closed, my son turned to me. Softly, Grandma took my fried chicken again. My heart ached seeing the sadness on my son's face. Don't worry, there's a little bit of meat left. Just wait a moment. Yay! As I heated up the oil again, I felt relieved seeing my son's joyful reaction to my words. However, my inner dissatisfaction lingered. My mother-in-law had become increasingly intrusive since my marriage, and it had worsened over the last year. Every week, she showed up unannounced during dinner prep time. Initially, she would just criticize my cooking and parenting, then leave her cream stew on the counter. But for the past 6 months, she started taking my food home with her, effectively ruining our meal. I couldn't fathom my mother-in-law, who lived alone since my father-in-law passed away, eating all 3 servings. She was probably throwing it away. As I prepared baby food and distracted the kids, I managed to cook. It was tough, but seeing my family's happy faces kept me going. Yet, my fried chicken, braised pork, mapo tofu, and hamburgers, all of it, got taken away. I grew up in a family that owned a restaurant, and my dad taught me how to cook, so I'm pretty confident in my culinary skills. And honestly, I think my food tastes better than my mother-in-law's overly sweet cream stew. It bothers me to have my abilities undermined by her, but with Mike in the picture, I've been finding it hard to stand up to my mother-in-law, who is also his grandma. More cream stew? Jake, who comes home after the kids have gone to sleep, makes a face when he sees dinner. Since only Mike's share of fried chicken was left, I served Jake a large platter of the cream stew. What can I do? It's what my mother-in-law brings over. If you don't like it, you can tell her. Yeah, I guess. Jake pokes at the stew, showing little enthusiasm. He shows up without considering Sarah's nap time and even takes away Mike's favorite foods right in front of him. Well, she's lonely since Dad died. That was 2 years ago. How much longer do I have to put up with this? Yeah, I guess. Jake is usually dependable, but he avoids confrontation when it comes to his mother-in-law. Another fruitless conversation passes, and I let out a deep sigh. The only positive thing is that she hasn't suggested moving in. One day, tired of the usual routine, my mother-in-law drops a bombshell during dinner. Instead of her typical greeting, she announces, "Emily, this Christmas, everyone's gathering at our place." What? But after your father passed away last year, we haven't really been able to do much. We've relied on relatives from Dad's side since the funeral, so I'm inviting them to our home as a way of saying thank you, she explains. Sounds exhausting, I respond, lacking enthusiasm. I wonder how she plans to host suddenly when we've always gathered at her brother-in-law's or her own childhood home for Christmas and family reunions. She frowns at me, as if dealing with someone of lesser intelligence. You're not just a bystander here. You'll be helping too, she declares. What? Come over on the 24th and help clean up, she adds, surprising me with her audacious decision. But Sarah is so young. Just use a baby carrier or something. That's how women used to do it back in the day, she suggests, brushing aside my objections. Maybe, but you're also in charge of the full-course Christmas meal. Don't you dare repackage store-bought food or cook anything that tastes bad. I don't want to be embarrassed, she warns. What? You can't be serious, I protest. I'm thinking of inviting your dad's relatives on one day and my sister's family and our daughter on another. It'll be a busy holiday, she continues, though her complaints are tinged with a hint of satisfaction. Hold on, the one who's going to be busy is me, not you. As the daughter-in-law of this family's eldest son, do your duty properly, okay, she concludes before leaving me stunned and my son surprised. She doesn't forget to pack the shrimp gratin that just needs to be baked. That night, when I share my mother-in-law's plans with Jake, he's just as puzzled as I am. What? She's organizing a party on Christmas Eve? Inviting Dad's side of the family when he's not here. Yeah, that's the idea, I confirm. Well, maybe Mom's feeling lonely, Jake suggests. I finally lose my temper at Jake's predictable response. Think about what it's like for me, always being pushed around. Seeing Jake's expression shift to one of realization, he falls silent. Even he understands that this time, it's too much, and he lets out a resigned sigh. All right, I'll handle the cleaning and entertaining the relatives. Really? I'm relieved to hear Jake's offer. It gives me some direction. But can you still cook the full-course Christmas meal? He asks. Just for this year. Let's keep Mom's reputation intact. Plus, everyone in the family loves your cooking, he pleads, eyeing the meatloaf his mother left for us. I mean, it's hard to say no after making a concession, he adds. Fine, just for this year. Thanks, man. I can't wait for Emily's Christmas feast. I say, grateful for his understanding. Geez, you're in high spirits, aren't you? Jake remarks, smiling. Being praised isn't so bad, and I don't mind cooking for people. So I prepare myself mentally, knowing it's just for this time, and agree to prepare a full-course Christmas meal. When I inform my mother-in-law that Jake will stay over to help with cleaning, she makes a displeased face and says, "How could you let the man of the house do such things?" But she seems reasonably satisfied, seeing Jake bustling around at his parents' home for my sake. Then comes Christmas lunchtime. Emily, is the corn soup ready? My mother-in-law asks. I'm preparing the croutons now, I reply, scurrying around the kitchen to get the carpaccio and corn soup ready. You're so inefficient. I'll bring the food myself, she criticizes. I'm sorry. If you're going to complain, try preparing a meal for 20 people. It's really, truly exhausting, I retort, feeling the strain of the day. Finally, the serving is done, and I sit down at the party, relieved to have made it through. Jake seems to have settled our daughter down for a nap in another room. Despite the challenge of preparing a full-course Christmas meal for 20 people, it's gratifying to see everyone relishing my cooking. However, this feeling of satisfaction is short-lived. This quiche looks so beautiful. It's like something you'd buy, someone compliments. Thank you, I reply, feeling a bit uneasy. You're good at flattery. This carrot slaw is perfectly balanced with the vinegar. The orange scent really freshens up your mouth, another guest remarks. That's because Christmas meals tend to be rich, so I made it a bit more acidic, I explain. Something feels off. Every time someone tries to praise my Christmas cooking, my mother-in-law interrupts with her own commentary. Finally, Sophia, father-in-law's sister, unwittingly unveils the source of the awkwardness. Emily, your mother-in-law is such a great cook, isn't she? Excuse me? I respond, taken aback. Unfazed, Sophie continues, did Olivia make this entire Christmas feast? That's amazing. Huh? I haven't cooked a full-course Christmas meal in ages. I was going to leave it to my daughter-in-law, but she's absolutely terrible in the kitchen and she never comes by. Even when I offer to teach her, my mother-in-law chimes in, completely disregarding the truth. I'm left dumbfounded by her audacious claims. Oh, Emily, you should really take after Olivia while she's still well. Jake might miss the taste of home sometimes, you know? The way to a man's heart is through his stomach, she adds, seemingly offering advice but actually delivering a veiled insult. Daniel, a relative nearby, laughs, adding to my discomfort. You know, Olivia, that pork belly stew you made last time was delicious. It's amazing you can cook both Western and Japanese dishes. It's not that big of a deal, but I'm glad you enjoyed it. My mother-in-law replies with false modesty, knowing full well that the pork belly stew was my creation. As I stand there, stunned, she silently mouths, "Go along with it." It becomes apparent that she's been claiming credit for all my dishes, including the Christmas feast, and sharing them with the family. Now she wants me to go along with her lie. No way! Especially after all the times she criticized my cooking. Even though I want to speak up, I feel overwhelmed by the crowd and can't find my voice. But then my son comes to the rescue. Mom, this omelet is really tasty. It looks different than usual, but your omelets are always good. His young voice cuts through the noise, silencing the adults. Oh, Mike, this is actually quiche your grandmother made. Sophia tries to cover for him, probably out of kindness, but my son is adamant. Huh? But it's tasty, so it's got to be Mom's omelette. Grandma's omelette is super sweet and gritty. It doesn't taste good. He insists passionately, waving his hands around, leaving the adults looking puzzled. Of course, my mother-in-law panics. Emily, don't teach the child to lie. Excuse me? Who's the one lying here, Mom? Am I a liar? Mike looks up at me, his face full of uncertainty. That's when I felt my anger rising. I felt silly. I didn't care what people thought of my mother-in-law or Jake. I tolerated her because she's Jake's mom and Mike's grandma, but turning my grandson into a liar just to save face? That's not right. If she's going to make my child lie, I'll stand up for what's right, even if it means being seen as the bad guy. I took a deep breath and stood tall. Mike isn't a liar. You're the one lying, Grandma. Huh, she looked surprised. She probably didn't expect me to confront her. I stood up and pointed dramatically at the table. I made this entire Christmas meal, including the corn soup, from start to finish. What? The room erupted in shock. My flustered mother-in-law began to panic and shout, Wait, Emily, you're lying. Are you out of your mind? I'm not lying, Sophia. You said you got the pork belly stew from Grandma, right? I turned to Sophia, who looked surprised. Ah, yes, it was delicious, Sophia admitted. I made that too, I revealed. Huh? Sophia looked bewildered. You're terrible, taking credit for Jake's mom's cooking and trying to frame her. You're the worst daughter-in-law. Then can you tell me the recipe for the pork belly stew, mother-in-law? I challenged. What? Well, she hesitated, then suddenly exclaimed, It's a secret. It's a secret family recipe, so I can't tell you in public. You don't have to give details or measurements, just the basics, I insisted. Even the relatives who were disgusted by our petty fight started to see who was in the right. Emily, that's enough. My husband Jake intervened. He had apparently finished putting our daughter to sleep and silently appeared near the door, restraining me with a stern voice and face. My mother-in-law clung to Jake as if he was her ally, looking like a tragic heroine. Jake, what's up with your daughter-in-law? She's calling me a liar. That's awful, Mom. You're the awful one here. What? Mother-in-law's mouth dropped open. This entire Christmas feast? Emily made it all? Yes, she did, while taking care of the kids. Trying to take credit for it is pretty low, Jake, I affirmed. Sophia, the only thing Mom made is that massive bowl of creamy stew over there. Have you tried it? Jake pointed out. Huh? Yeah, Sophia responded, visibly shaken. Yeah, it was insanely sweet, wasn't it? Mom thinks if it's sweet, it's tasty. She's always been so cautious about salt and oil, but uses sugar with no limits, so all her dishes taste like a block of sugar, Jake explained. Is that so? The pork belly stew was probably made by my daughter-in-law too. If you got any other dishes from Mom recently, they were likely made by Emily, Jake continued. Really? Even that meatloaf? Sophie asked. That was me. And the mapo tofu and shrimp gratin. That was me, I confirmed. Everyone in the family was disillusioned with mother-in-law because of her own son's revelation. Isn't that right, Mom? Jake challenged. Mother-in-law, exposed for all her lies, started panicking. It seemed like she had given up on lying and was now trying to appeal to Jake's emotions. Why? Why were you siding with your daughter-in-law? I'm your mom, she pleaded. I didn't want to have to say this either, Mom, Jake responded solemnly. I thought you were just lonely because Dad isn't here, so I've been having Emily put up with you. But this isn't anything but harassment towards her. There's no reason to protect you anymore. Don't see Emily or the kids ever again, Jake firmly tells his mother, dismissing her pleas. He starts cleaning up the Christmas feast and then apologizes to the relatives. I'm sorry for the disturbance this Christmas, Emily. Mike, let's go, Jake says as he takes Mike's hand and stands up. Mike looks at his grandmother and asks, Grandma, where's your I'm sorry? Huh? When you lie, you say I'm sorry, then you get forgiven, right? Isn't that right, Mom? Mike questions. Huh? His grandmother stammers, unable to respond. I get it. You have to be forgiving when it comes to raising kids, but a simple sorry isn't going to cut it, Jake remarks. Seeing his mother's reluctance to apologize, he sighs in resignation. Grandma can't even say I'm sorry, and she's supposed to be an adult. How sad. Let's go home and have Mom's delicious Christmas feast, okay? Jake suggests to Mike. Oh, we left behind a growling mother-in-law and confused relatives, carrying our sleeping daughter and the Christmas feast as we left Mike's house. We went straight to my parents' place and served the Christmas feast. Everyone was delighted and ate with joy. This is what I had been striving for, so my heart was full. Jake, of course, apologized profusely and promised never to let us meet mother-in-law again. The atmosphere at my house stayed uncomfortable. The relatives left, leaving only my mother-in-law and some bland food. The next day, my mother-in-law's sister, her husband, and Jake's sister visited as promised. When they saw the bland food, they laughed and said, We expected as much. It seems my mother-in-law's lack of cooking skills was well known among her relatives. So you boasted about hosting a Christmas feast? I wondered what trick you'd pull, they teased. Maybe you're just jealous of Emily, who's good at cooking and praised by Jake and Mike. Sorry for the inconvenience, they added. After hearing the details from Jake, my sister-in-law thanked me for my efforts. I'm sorry for jumping to conclusions. Turns out Sophia also enjoys cooking, and we bonded over a recipe for braised pork belly, she said. The misunderstanding with Jake was cleared up, and I found new friends who share my cooking hobby. I felt refreshed, enjoying a carefree Christmas. Of course, my mother-in-law wasn't going to give up easily, but I was prepared. As I was making cornbread, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. She was furious on the other end of the line. Excuse me, where are you? It's dinner time. Do your duty as a wife. Are you making the same mistake and coming over again? She scolded. No thanks, I replied. What? You'll be the one left out by the family, she warned. That won't be a problem. Actually, it was you who got shunned by the relatives. I've even made plans to cook with Sophia next time, I informed her. What? Mother-in-law probably never imagined that I'd become close to father-in-law's side of the family. I informed my mother-in-law that I wouldn't be returning to her house. Instead, my kids and I have been staying at my parents' house since Christmas. We're planning to find a new place to live now that the holidays are over. Despite my mother-in-law's insistence on living near her, Jake's workplace is closer to my parents' house. Since my mother-in-law couldn't heed Jake's warning to stay away from me, we've decided to physically distance ourselves. Right now, Jake is the only one living at his parents' house, and he'll leave once he's ready. When my mother-in-law demanded to know where we were, I simply responded that she couldn't get away with not cherishing Jake's mom. However, I reminded her that both Jake and his sister had forgiven her, so it was okay. With that, I thanked her for everything and said goodbye before hanging up and blocking her number to ensure I never had to hear her voice again. 2 years later, my family eagerly waits for my cooking in the living room, playing around as I fry burgers in the kitchen. It warms my heart to see them eagerly awaiting my cooking with smiles on their faces.
My name is Goldie, and I just turned 15. Reflecting on the past 2 years, it's astonishing to see the transformations in my life. It feels like my world has been flipped upside down not once, but twice, starting when I was just 13. That's when my parents decided to divorce, and my mom ended up keeping the house. I stayed with her, while my dad agreed to a substantial alimony payment, which I once overheard Mom boasting about on the phone, claiming she finally got what she deserved. I constantly asked my mom why she and Dad split, but her replies were vague. She would say, "Your father made his choice, Goldie," with a tone that was both stern and icy. She insisted he didn't want to be part of our lives or see me anymore, and that I should accept it. But acceptance was impossible for something so bewildering. How could my dad, who always called me his little son scientist and spent countless hours on my school projects, suddenly cut off his affection? The pain was sometimes so intense that it left me breathless. Then, every holiday, I began receiving anonymous emails filled with simple, yet heartfelt messages of love and encouragement. The first time I read one, my heart skipped a beat. They had to be from my dad. Phrases like "keep reaching for the stars, sweetheart," were his bedtime staples. I never mentioned these emails to my mom. Even his name seemed to sour her mood. Post-divorce, Mom left her job, claiming she needed time to heal, though Dad's alimony checks more than covered our expenses. She busied herself with house renovations and yoga classes, claiming she was on a journey to find herself. That's where she met Liam. Soon, talk of new beginnings and blended families filled our home, and suddenly, Liam and his children, Benjamin and Haley, were living with us. Everything changed dramatically. Mom transformed, doting on Benjamin and Haley as if they were delicate treasures, while I felt invisible at home. She spent hours on Haley's hair and cooked Benjamin's favorite dishes, often leaving me sidelined. One day, overwhelmed by neglect, I confronted her. She looked at me with a mix of pity and annoyance, explaining that Benjamin and Haley, having lost their mother as toddlers, needed more care. She urged me to be understanding, given my age. Mom's new obsession became taking family photos every weekend. She meticulously coordinated our outfits for what seemed like runway shows, often buying new clothes for Benjamin and Haley for these occasions. In these moments, dressed up and smiling for pictures, I felt more like a prop than a daughter, while I often had to pick out my old clothes that just happened to match their color theme. "Goldie, stand behind Benjamin, no, move to the left, and try to smile more naturally," Mom would instruct, adjusting her phone camera for the perfect shot. "Haley, sweetie, tilt your head just a bit, perfect." These photo sessions could last hours, with continuous clicking and posing until Mom captured the ideal image for her social media posts. Afterward, she'd eagerly show off the photos at family gatherings. "Look at how many likes this one got," she'd boast to Aunt Macy or Uncle Matthew, proclaiming, "Everyone says we look like the perfect family. Don't the kids look great together?" You'd never guess they weren't always siblings. Standing there, I felt reduced to just another accessory in Mom's meticulously crafted play, while she extolled the virtues of our beautiful blended family to anyone who would listen. The photos hid the truth: how Haley would roll her eyes when I walked into a room, or how Benjamin acted as if I was invisible. But the hardest part wasn't the forced smiles or the endless posing. It was losing contact with Grandma Jessie, my dad's mom. After the divorce, Mom had made it very clear that visiting her was off limits. I missed Grandma's warm hugs and the genuine attention she gave me, truly listening without the distraction of a smartphone. Those memories of baking cookies in her kitchen and her hearty laughter were all that I had left. Meanwhile, I was left to deal with Mom's relatives who completely bought into her perfect family narrative. They fawned over Benjamin and Haley, praising Mom for being such an incredible stepmother, while I lingered in the background, feeling more and more invisible. As time passed, the rift between Mom and me widened immensely. She was utterly engrossed with her new family, organizing everything around Benjamin and Haley's activities and preferences. Family movie nights and weekend plans revolved around what Benjamin and Haley wanted. My suggestions were overlooked, lost in the excitement of Benjamin's choice of a new superhero movie or Haley's preference for a trendy ice cream shop. One Sunday, as they prepared for another family outing, I stayed in my room. No one came to check on me or encourage me to join. I overheard Haley saying, "Good, now we don't have to pretend to include her." Mom's response was just silence. Then summer came, and with it, a big announcement that once would have thrilled me. Mom and Liam gathered everyone in the living room, buzzing with excitement. "We have amazing news," Mom announced, gripping Liam's hand. "We're planning a month-long trip to Europe." Benjamin and Haley erupted in cheers. "Can we go to Venice?" Haley squealed. Benjamin added, "They have the best soccer stadium." I watched from the couch as they celebrated like lottery winners, bouncing around with excitement. No one turned to me. No one asked if I was excited about the trip. I felt like an outsider observing a happy family on a TV show, a family I wasn't part of. On the morning of the trip, I was in my room, meticulously checking my packing list. When I glanced up, I caught Haley by my dresser, her hands busy with my favorite blue swimsuit and a pair of scissors. With deliberate snips, she cut through the fabric, a slight smirk gracing her lips. For a moment, I was frozen, shocked by the malice of her actions. I had always known Haley didn't like me. Her disdain had been clear for the last 2 years, but this act was openly hostile and cruel. Reacting instinctively, I lunged forward, trying to snatch the scissors from her grip. Haley pulled back, and suddenly we were entangled in a tussle for the scissors. Though smaller, she was unexpectedly strong. Amid our struggle, she began to scream, "Help! Goldie is attacking me." Her cries summoned a rush of footsteps thundering up the stairs. Mom and Liam burst into the room to find us disheveled and red-faced, with a torn swimsuit lying on the floor between us. "She tried to hurt me," Haley cried out, running to her dad. "I was just standing here, and she went crazy." "That's not true," I protested, breathless from the altercation. "She was cutting up my swimsuit. I was just trying to stop her." Mom barely glanced at the swimsuit on the floor. "What is wrong with you, Goldie? Are you so jealous of Haley that you'd physically attack her? Go to your room and stay there until we leave for the airport. Clearly, you can't be trusted around Haley." They left with Haley, and through my closed door, I could hear Mom comforting her. "Don't worry, sweetie. We'll go to the mall right now and buy you some new clothes to help you feel better after this awful experience." I sat on my bed, staring at the remains of my swimsuit, listening to their departure. No one asked if I needed a new swimsuit for the vacation. No one seemed to care about my side of the story. That evening, we gathered in the foyer, luggage in hand. Mom was double-checking her list while Liam loaded the bags into the waiting taxi. "I still think you don't deserve this trip after what you did to Haley," Mom said with a cold glance in my direction. "But we can't leave you home alone for a month, so you'll have to come. Just try not to cause any more problems." At the airport, the tension was palpable. We approached the check-in desk, and Mom handed over our documents. My stomach churned, perhaps from the early hour, the ongoing stress, or some unresolved feeling. "Mom," I said, shifting uncomfortably, "I need to use the bathroom." She hardly looked up as she rummaged through her purse. "Fine, but hurry up. We can't miss our flight because of you." "Should I take my bag?" I gestured to my carry-on. "Just leave it," she snapped. "I'm not having you wander off with our documents and money." I nodded and made my way to the restroom, navigating through the bustling crowd. The signs were confusing, and I had to double back twice. By the time I found the bathroom and finished, about 15 minutes had passed. But when I returned to the check-in area, my family was nowhere in sight. At first, I thought I might have mistaken the counter. "Mom," I called out, my voice rising in panic. "Liam?" People turned to look, but none of them were my family. I started running, my feet echoing on the shiny airport floor, frantically searching. Perhaps they had already gone through security. As I frantically searched the bustling airport, my heart pounded audibly. Without a phone, money, ID, or boarding pass, since Mom held all of those, I felt utterly stranded. From the check-in desk to the bathrooms, then on to the food court, I dashed, my panic intensifying with each fruitless pass. Around me, life proceeded as usual. People hugged their loved ones goodbye and pulled their luggage, immersed in their own worlds, while mine seemed to unravel. Eventually, exhaustion overcame me, and I found myself standing amid the crowd in the terminal, overwhelmed by despair. Tears burst forth, not quiet, dignified ones, but loud, heaving sobs that racked my body. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" A gentle voice cut through my sobs. I looked up to find a woman in an airport uniform, her expression lined with concern. "Where are your parents?" she asked. Choking back tears, I explained my plight in halting, breathless fragments, that my family had left for the bathroom break with all my belongings. Her expression shifted from concern to alarm as she quickly guided me to an airport staff area marked personnel only. Before I knew it, I was seated in a small office, surrounded by serious-looking security staff who peppered me with questions and made calls while examining security footage. Their faces turned grim as they watched. I overheard one of them confirm to another. They checked in, waited until she was away, then proceeded to their gate and boarded the flight. "They've already taken off. Do you have any adult relatives we could call to come get you?" one of the officers asked, his voice softening. With a shaky breath, I managed to say, "My dad. I haven't seen him in 2 years, but I know his name and where he used to work." They noted down the information, and soon, calls were being made from the next room. Wrapped in a borrowed airport blanket, I tried not to think about the plane carrying my mother and what felt like her real family, soaring across the Atlantic without me. Then, a familiar voice called out, "Goldie?" I looked up to see my dad standing in the doorway, older and more worn than I remembered, but with the same kind eyes that once scoured my bedroom for monsters and beamed with pride at my science projects. "Dad." My voice cracked, and suddenly I was running into his arms, enveloped in a hug so reminiscent of my childhood, as we both cried. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," he murmured repeatedly. The drive to his place felt surreal. I sat in the passenger seat of his car, stealing glances at him, half afraid he'd vanish if I looked away too long. He now lived in a different part of the city, in a large apartment building I'd never seen before. "There's someone I want you to meet," he said as we ascended to the 8th floor. "My fiancée, Gemma. She's been my rock through everything." Gemma was a warm-faced woman with curly red hair who greeted me with such a compassionate look that it almost brought another wave of tears. Her presence felt comforting, a stark contrast to the cold abandonment I'd just experienced, and immediately wrapped me in a comforting embrace, as if she had known me forever. "You poor thing," she said, guiding me into the kitchen. "You must be famished. I'm going to fix you a proper meal right now, and I won't take no for an answer." As Gemma got to work in the kitchen, Dad and I settled at the kitchen table. The familiar aroma of coffee permeated the air. He still preferred it black, with just a hint of sugar. "Goldie," Dad began, his hands clasped tightly around his mug, his voice steady, yet his hands betraying a slight tremble. "It's time you knew the whole truth about what happened 2 years ago." He paused, collecting his thoughts. "I came home early from work that day. A meeting had been canceled unexpectedly. I wasn't supposed to be there." He swallowed hard before continuing. "I found your mother in our living room with Liam. They weren't just talking." My stomach tightened as the implications sank in. When I confronted them, Liam tried to intimidate me, and it escalated into a fight. Not my proudest moment. Your mother tried to intervene, and during the struggle, she was accidentally pushed and fell, hitting the coffee table. Dad's voice cracked as he recalled the scene. There was blood on her face from the impact, and her hands were all scraped up. I tried to help her, but before I could do much, she threatened me. She said if I didn't comply with her demands, she'd tell the police I had beaten her. She claimed she had the bruises to prove it and threatened that I'd end up in jail and never see you again. He looked into my eyes, his own filled with a mix of pain and regret. She demanded a divorce, the house, alimony, and that I cut off all contact with you. She was adamant that if I tried to reach out or tell you the truth, she'd follow through with her threat. The next morning, as I sat at the kitchen counter picking at my breakfast, Gemma joined me with a resolute expression. "Goldie," she said, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. "My brother Luca is a family law attorney. He's excellent, and I think he can help us." Dad, glancing up from his newspaper, looked hopeful for the first time in a while. "You think he'd take the case?" Gemma was already pulling out her phone. When I told him what happened at the airport, he was ready to come right over. "He's just waiting for our go-ahead." Everything happened swiftly after that. Luca, a tall man with the same red hair and kind eyes as Gemma, but with an underlying firmness, joined us at the dining room table. He took detailed notes as I relayed my story, occasionally shifting into what Gemma referred to as his lawyer mode. He made several calls then and there, and within hours, he had filed paperwork with Child Protective Services and the guardianship authorities. The authorities took an immediate interest. Apparently, abandoning your child at an airport tends to draw rapid attention. A few days later, Dad suggested a special visit. "There's someone who's been missing you terribly," he said as we drove through familiar neighborhoods. "Someone who never stopped asking about you." When we pulled up to Grandma Jessie's house, my heart leaped. It looked just as I remembered. The yellow paint, the flower boxes under the windows, and the old porch swing where we used to sit and drink lemonade. Before we could even get to the front door, it swung open. "Goldie," Grandma cried, her voice choked with emotion. Suddenly, I found myself wrapped in one of her signature bear hugs, infused with a scent of cinnamon and fresh laundry. "Oh, my sweet girl, let me look at you," she exclaimed. We spent the afternoon leafing through old photo albums, indulging in Grandma's renowned chocolate chip cookies, and catching up on the time we'd missed. She revealed birthday cards she had written but never mailed, stashed away in a drawer with newspaper clippings of my school's honor roll listings, which she had carefully preserved. Days melded into weeks, and before I realized it, a month had slipped by. Meanwhile, Mom and her perfect new family were gallivanting across Europe, living it up, as their social media updates showed. Every day brought new images. Haley posing, Benjamin exploring, Mom and Liam enjoying romantic dinners in Venice. Yet, none of them reached out to see if I was safe, if I had a place to stay, or if I was even okay. All my belongings, including my phone and laptop, were with Mom, but that seemed of little concern to her. I would log into my social media accounts from Dad's computer and see that they were active, liking posts and commenting, clearly aware of my online presence marked by the little green next to my name. Yet, there was no sign of concern, not a single message checking in on me. Dad suggested I be there at the house when they returned. My heart pounded as I sat in the living room, hearing the taxi pull up outside. Dad was discreetly hidden in Mom's home office, waiting for the perfect moment. We could hear their voices through the door, chatting merrily about their European escapade. As the key turned in the lock and they entered, laden with shopping bags and suitcases, they stopped short at the sight of me. Mom recovered swiftly, a smug smile spreading across her face. "Look who found her way home," Liam joked, setting down their bags. "See, we told you she'd be fine." That's when Dad emerged from the office. Mom's smug smile instantly turned to shock, then fury. "What the hell are you doing in my house?" she yelled, stepping back against Liam. "Get out right now." Dad remained calm and resolute. "I'm here to tell you how this is going to go, Macy. I'm taking Goldie with me, permanently this time. I've filed for full custody and am seeking to terminate your parental rights. The paperwork's already in motion with the court." Mom's face paled, then flushed with anger. "You can't do that." Dad's tone hardened. "I can, and I have. And there's more. We're also pressing criminal charges for child endangerment and abandoning a minor at an airport, both of which carry serious jail time." Mom trembled with rage. "You think anyone will believe you after what you did to me? I still have pictures of my injuries. I'll tell everyone how you beat me." Dad's smile then was not one of joy, but of resignation. "Go ahead. My lawyer is already prepared for that old lie. But here's the thing, Macy. You didn't file a police report immediately, and now you've only tarnished your credibility. It's been a year since the unimaginable happened. My mother left me alone at an airport as she jetted off to Europe, without a penny, a phone, or any ID. The whole ordeal was captured on security cameras, from her walking away to her boarding the plane, seemingly carefree about leaving her 15-year-old daughter stranded. What kind of mother does that? My father's outrage was palpable in court, amplified by the video evidence, the police report, and the stream of posts she shared during her vacation, never once checking to see if I was safe. The trial concluded swiftly. The evidence against her was undeniable: airport footage, police statements, her own social media betrayals. The judge barely needed time to deliberate. The verdict stripped her of parental rights and halted the alimony payments my father had been making. Custody was granted solely to him, which merely formalized the reality we'd all come to accept: I would never return to live with her. As part of their sentence, both Mom and her partner, Liam, received a year of probation and a hefty fine, which drained the color from Liam's face when the judge announced it. Watching them squirm brought me no joy. Instead, I felt detached, like I was observing the resolution of a film about someone else's turmoil. 7 months later, I'm in my new room at my dad and his fiancée Gemma's place, deciding which earrings to wear to their upcoming wedding, where I'll be Gemma's bridesmaid. The ceremony's dress, a pale blue gown reminiscent of a clear summer sky, is ready and waiting. After the trial, Mom and her new family moved away quietly. My Aunt Linda, who sided with us, along with most of my mother's family, said, "Blood doesn't excuse her actions." Grandma Jessie now visits us every Sunday, bringing her beloved chocolate chip cookies and stories that tease smiles and laughter from my father and me as we create new memories. I switched schools, leaving behind the reminders of a past too painful to linger on. At Riverside High, I found genuine friends like Rachel and Kim, friends who support and understand me, even if they don't know every detail of my past. Sometimes I find myself thinking about Mom, Liam, and others from that earlier part of my life. They seem like characters from a book I read long ago, remote and vague. I've blocked them on social media, not from any resentment, but simply because I don't need to maintain that link anymore. I'm moving on, no longer just a background figure in their idealized family scenes. My dad often tells me I'm stronger than he was at my age. He might be right, or perhaps I'm just lucky to have people around me who define what a real family should be, people who are there for you, who defend you, and make sure you always feel cherished.
Don't you dare pretend you didn't know what you were doing. My mom screamed into the phone, her voice so loud I had to hold it away from my ear. My heart pounded against my ribs as her words pierced through me. We're family. You can't just abandon us because your feelings got hurt. I sat there in my home office, staring at the April rain hammering against the windows of my Chicago suburban home, feeling a strange mix of numbness and white-hot rage coursing through my veins. Everything I thought I knew about my family had just crumbled before my eyes, shattered like glass on concrete. All because of a cloud storage sharing error my brother Nathan had made, accidentally giving me access to years of secret conversations he'd been having with our parents. My name is Abigail Monroe. I'm 35 years old, and until yesterday, I thought I was just being a good daughter by helping my parents with their retirement expenses. The weight of responsibility has always sat heavily on my shoulders. I'd built a successful digital marketing company from scratch after putting myself through night school with student loans, and when my business finally took off 5 years ago, I started sending my parents extra money each month. They'd always struggled financially, or so I believed, and I wanted to make sure they could enjoy their retirement without worrying about basic expenses. What I didn't know was how they really saw me. The family ATM just sent another $3,000, my brother had texted, followed by my dad's response. Keep that gravy train running. She's too stupid to realize we're using her. My stomach twisted into knots as I read the words over and over. Then my mother just bought those golf clubs Walter wanted. Abigail would flip if she knew. Her money was going to those instead of medication. It felt like I was about to throw up. The screenshots kept coming, years of conversations about how to manipulate me. How to play on my sympathies, how to extract more money. My hands shook uncontrollably as I scrolled through message after message. My vision blurring with unshed tears. Nathan quickly tried to delete them, but it was too late. I'd seen everything. I'd already captured it all. 3 years of them laughing at my generosity, planning expensive vacations. While telling me they couldn't afford their medications, upgrading their cars while claiming their heating bill was overwhelming their budget. Each revelation was like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. For the last day, my phone had been blowing up with texts and calls from my family. My dad swore they were just joking around, his messages dripping with the same condescension I now recognized all too well. My mom said I was taking things out of context, her voice falsely sweet when I picked up once. Nathan claimed he was just going along with it to stay on our parents' good side. But their own words had exposed the ugly truth, laid bare for me to see. The spring storm intensified outside, violent gusts of wind lashing rain against my windows, matching the tempest raging inside me. I'd been financing their comfortable retirement for years, thinking I was helping them survive while I worked 60-hour weeks. Meanwhile, they'd been living it up, laughing at how easily they could manipulate their stupid, successful daughter. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined, reaching past my skin and bone to wound something essential inside me. My laptop chimed with an incoming video call. Nathan's profile picture flashed on my screen. I felt my jaw tighten and my shoulders stiffen. I wasn't ready for this conversation. But maybe it was time to hear what he had to say. After all, I had some things to say too, things that had been left unsaid for far too long. I clicked accept, but kept my arms crossed defensively. What do you want? Nathan looked miserable, his hair disheveled and dark circles under his eyes. Abigail, please, I need to explain everything. It's not what you think. Explain what? Like how you guys have been making fun of me for ages. I held up my phone. The screen still showing one of his texts, just told Abigail Dad needs dental surgery again. My voice trembled with barely contained rage. Is this funny to you, Nathan? Was it amusing to watch me worry myself sick over Dad's non-existent health problems? It's not what it looks like, Nathan pleaded, his voice cracking. Mom and Dad, they started it, and I just went along with it. I didn't know how to stop it once it began. So you were just following orders? Like some kind of financial Nazi? The words came out harsher than I'd intended, but I couldn't stop myself. My hands were shaking so hard I had to set the phone down. I've been sending $3,000 every month, Nathan. That's $36,000 a year, for 5 years. Do you know what that adds up to while I've been eating ramen to make ends meet? Nathan looked down, unable to meet my gaze. I know it's a lot. $180,000, Nathan. And that doesn't include the extra for Dad's supposed medical expenses. Or Mom's broken furnace last winter. I felt sick saying the words, my stomach churning with acid. I remembered how I'd skipped a vacation with friends, my first in 3 years, to send them an extra $5,000 for a furnace that apparently never needed replacing. Look, they took it too far, I know, but they're getting older and they're 65, not 95. I slammed my hand down on my desk, making my coffee cup rattle. Dad's still golfing every weekend with his fancy new clubs that I paid for while thinking he needed medication. The same dad who told me he couldn't help with my college because they were struggling financially. Remember how I worked 2 jobs and took night classes while you got a full ride and a graduation trip to Europe? Please, Abigail, they're freaking out. Dad's worried about his heart medication. Nathan was typing something on his phone even as he spoke to me. I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh even to my own ears. The medication that doesn't exist? Or the real medicine he actually needs that I've been paying for while you all blow. The money on luxury items? Are you texting them right now? Giving them a play-by-play of our conversation? Nathan's face crumpled. I messed up, I know that. But they really do need your help now. All those extras, they've gotten used to the lifestyle. They can't afford their mortgage without you. Their mortgage? On the lakeside condo they bought last year while telling me they were struggling to pay rent on their modest apartment? I felt a strange calm settling over me, like the eye of a hurricane. I think we're done here. Abigail, please. No, I've been Abigail, please, for way too long. I'm just Abigail, and I'm over it. I clicked the red button, ending the call and cutting off his pleading face mid-sentence. After the call with Nathan ended, I sank into my couch, my entire body trembling like I'd been standing in the cold for hours. The screenshots from their group chat played on repeat in my mind, each word seared into my memory. In one, my dad had written, "Just told Abigail the roof is leaking. Let's see how much we can squeeze out of her this time." I could almost hear his smug voice as I read the words. My mom had replied, "She's such a sucker for helping family." I almost feel bad. Almost. I could picture her typing this with the same hands that used to stroke my hair when I was sick as a child. Then Nathan, maybe we should start a betting pool on how quickly she sends the money. My own brother, treating my generosity like a game. I'd been nothing but an ATM to them. A resource to be drained. A joke at the family dinner table. My chest felt hollow, as if something vital had been scooped out. I grabbed my laptop and signed into my bank account. The blue light from the screen lit up my face, which was still wet from crying. As I went through my transaction history, every month for the past 5 years, there it was, $3,000 transferred to my parents' joint account. Plus all the emergencies, another $40,000 over the years. Dental work that never happened. Car repairs for problems that didn't exist. Medical bills for treatments they never received. Each transaction represented nights I'd stayed up late working. Weekends sacrificed, dreams deferred. And what had I sacrificed? I delayed buying my own home for 2 years to help them with their supposed mortgage troubles, living in a tiny apartment with a leaking ceiling. I'd worked 60-hour weeks to afford both my life and theirs. Collapsing into bed exhausted most nights. I'd skipped vacations with friends, bought second-hand furniture, and cut corners on my own life to make sure they were comfortable. The realization made my chest tighten until it was hard to breathe. For what? So they could laugh at me? So they could buy golf clubs and take cruises, while I worried if they were eating properly. So they could post photos of their country club dinners on social media while I ate microwave meals? I opened another tab and logged into the investment account I'd set up for them 3 years ago, my secret plan to surprise them with a supplemental retirement fund. When they turned 70, I'd been contributing $1,000 monthly. Money that could have gone toward my own future. The balance showed just over $42,000. My finger hovered over the close account button, trembling slightly. No. Not yet. I needed a clear head for this, even as anger and grief warred within me. I called my best friend Olivia, who was also my attorney. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone to my ear. "They did what?" she practically screamed when I explained the situation. The raw outrage in her voice was oddly comforting, validating the storm of emotions raging inside me. "I know," I said, my voice hollow, like it was coming from somewhere outside my body. "I've been an idiot. A complete fool." "No, Abigail. You haven't been an idiot," Olivia's tone softened but remained firm. "You've been kind. Generous. They're the ones who should be ashamed, not you." I heard her take a deep breath. "What do you want to do now? How are you feeling?" "I don't know," I admitted, sinking deeper into my couch. The weight of betrayal pressing down on me like a physical thing. Part of me wants to just cut them off completely, slam the door, and throw away the key. Another part wants to confront them and hear them try to explain themselves. Watch them squirm as they try to justify what they've done. Before you do anything rash, we need to review what you've set up for them legally, Olivia said. Shifting into lawyer mode. Are they on any of your accounts? Insurance policies? What about that retirement supplement you mentioned? Any joint credit cards or loans? I felt a chill run through me, raising goosebumps on my arms. I hadn't even thought about all the ways we were financially entangled beyond the monthly transfers. Oh no, Olivia. I added them to my premium health insurance as dependents 2 years ago. I didn't even know Dad's heart meds were included in my plan. They're also set to get my life insurance money. And I'm covering Nathan's student loans too. I really need to figure this out, I said, feeling my stomach tighten. I feel like I'm caught in a trap they set. One step at a time, Olivia counseled, her voice steady and reassuring. First, gather all the documentation of what you've given them, bank statements, texts asking for money, everything you can find. Second, make a list of all financial connections you need to sever. Third, decide if you want to communicate with them about why you're doing this, or if you want to just cut ties silently. As I hung up, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Your dad is very upset. His blood pressure is through the roof because of your behavior. We need to talk now. You're putting his health at risk with this childish tantrum. I could feel something inside me solidifying, like hot metal cooling in cold water. The manipulation was still happening, right now. They still thought I would fold like a house of cards, that I would come running the moment they mentioned a health concern, that my guilt could be weaponized against me. Not anymore. Not ever again. I opened my laptop again and began taking screenshots of every monthly transfer. My jaw clenched so tight it ached. Then I started a document titled Family Financial Support 2018 to 2023 and began listing everything, every monthly payment, every supposed emergency, every sacrifice I'd made while they were living it up at my expense. By the time I finished, the document was 12 pages long, and the truth was inescapable. Staring back at me from my screen in black and white. I wasn't just hurt. I wasn't just angry. I was done. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The fog of confusion and betrayal had lifted, and my path forward was suddenly crystal clear. Before doubt could creep in, I called my assistant at the office. Rachel, I need a personal day. Something's come up that requires my full attention. My voice sounded stronger than it had in days, resolute and determined. Of course, Abigail. I'll reschedule your meetings. Take whatever time you need. She replied, concern evident in her voice. Abigail Monroe speaking, I answered when my phone rang 20 minutes later. My posture straight, shoulders back. Ms. Monroe, this is Trevor from Illinois Community Bank. I'm returning your call. About closing an investment account, the voice said, professional and courteous. Yes, thank you for getting back to me so quickly. I took a deep breath. My heart pounding against my ribs. I need to close the supplemental retirement account I set up for Walter and Eleanor Monroe. I see. May I ask if there's a problem with the account? Trevor's tone remained neutral. No problem with the account, I said, my fingers gripping the phone tightly. Just a problem with the intended recipients. After confirming my identity and authority over the account, Trevor walked me through the process. Since I was the sole controller of the account, it had been intended as a gift. I could close it without my parents' knowledge or consent. The $42,680 would be transferred back to my primary account within 3 business days. Is there anything else I can help you with today, Ms. Monroe? Trevor asked. Actually, yes. My voice didn't waver, though my hand trembled slightly. I'd like to cancel all recurring transfers to the joint account belonging to Walter and Eleanor Monroe. Those are currently set at $3,000 monthly, correct? Correct. I have those records right in front of me. I'd like that stopped immediately. The words felt like liberation. Each syllable loosening a chain that had bound me for years. Step 1 complete. I drew a deep breath, feeling lighter already. Next, I called my health insurance provider. This one was trickier. Mid-year changes to dependents required a qualifying life event. And discovering your parents have been scamming you for years wasn't on their list. But after explaining my situation to a sympathetic representative named David, he found a solution. Since they have their own residence and you no longer provide more than 50% of their financial support, we can process this as a change in dependent status, he explained. His voice kind. They'll receive notification that they've been removed from your policy effective at the end of the month, which gives them 30 days to find alternative coverage. That's perfect, I said, relief flooding through me. Thank you for understanding. I was worried this would be complicated. Family situations can be complicated, David said kindly. Been there myself. I'm glad we could find a solution that works for you. Step 2 complete. I checked it off my handwritten list, feeling a surge of accomplishment. The life insurance policy was the easiest change. A simple online form removed my parents as beneficiaries and replaced them with a local children's hospital charity. It took less than 5 minutes, but the emotional weight it lifted was immense. By noon, I had gone through and removed all my financial ties to my family. Except for one, I've been taking care of my brother Nathan's student loan for the last 3 years. He still had 2 years of payments left at $580 monthly. Unlike my parents, who had fully funded his education, I'd been forced to take out loans for mine. That one gave me pause, my finger hovering over the keyboard. Nathan had participated in the deception, laughing along in those group chats. But he'd also seemed genuinely remorseful during our video call. Had he been pressured by our parents, or was he just sorry he got caught? Was he worthy of a second chance? My phone pinged with a text from Nathan. Mom and Dad are freaking out. Dad says his prescription refill was denied at the pharmacy. What did you do? He says he needs his heart meds now. That answered that question. Not a word of apology or understanding. Just more pressure to restore the flow of money. My momentary sympathy evaporated like morning dew in summer heat. I replied, their consequences are not my problem anymore. My phone immediately rang. Nathan. I sent it to voicemail, watching as the notification appeared. And disappeared. The phone rang again. And again. I silenced it completely. Instead, I opened my email and composed a formal letter to my parents, attaching the 12-page document I'd created the night before. I titled it simply, Financial Support Provided 2018 to 2023. The email read, Walter and Eleanor. Attached is a comprehensive accounting of the financial support I have provided over the past 5 years, totaling $221,800. I have removed you from my health insurance policy effective May 31st. And the retirement account has been closed. Your duplicity has been documented with screenshots of your own messages revealing how you have systematically manipulated and deceived me while mocking my generosity. Do not contact me again unless it is to repay what you have taken under false pretenses. Abigail Monroe. I read it over twice, my heart racing as if I'd run a marathon. Each word felt like both a knife and a shield. I attached the document, took one final deep breath, and hit send. Step 3 complete. Then I blocked their numbers on my phone, removed them from all my social media accounts, and sat back in my chair, exhausted but relieved. For the first time in years, my money was truly my own. The sense of freedom was so overwhelming. It nearly knocked me off my feet. I managed 3 days of blessed silence before they found a way around my blocks. The doorbell rang at 8:30 p.m. while I was reviewing client proposals in my home office. Through the security camera feed on my smartphone, I saw my parents and Nathan standing on my porch, their faces a mixture of anger and panic. My stomach dropped as if I'd plunged down the first hill of a roller coaster. I didn't open the door. Instead, I called Olivia, my hands shaking again. They're at my house, I whispered, as if they might hear me through the walls. All 3 of them. Standing on my porch right now. Do not let them in, she said firmly, no hesitation in her voice. If they don't leave, call the police for trespassing. I'm serious, Abigail. That feels extreme, I said, watching their agitated movements on my phone screen. They're my family, after all. Trust me, Abigail. Once they're inside, it'll be much harder to get them out, physically and emotionally. They've already shown they don't respect your boundaries. Don't give them the chance to bulldoze over them in person. The doorbell rang again, followed by pounding that seemed to shake the walls of my house. My heart raced, adrenaline surging through my system. Abigail, my dad shouted, his voice carrying easily through the door. We know you're in there. You can't just cut us off without talking to us. Open this door right now. I sent a text to Nathan, I have nothing to say. Please leave or I'll call the police. My finger trembled as I hit send, but I meant every word. Through the security feed, I watched Nathan check his phone, show it to my parents, and then have what appeared to be a heated discussion. My mom seemed to be crying, dramatically wiping at her eyes with a tissue, while my dad's face had turned an alarming shade of red as he gestured angrily. Eventually they left, piling back into their luxury SUV, but not before my dad shouted, "You're going to regret this, Abigail. We're family. You can't just abandon us. After everything we've done for you." The irony of him using the word abandon wasn't lost on me. They had abandoned any pretense of loving me years ago, seeing me only as a resource to exploit. A well to be drained until it ran dry. The next morning, the emails started flooding in from new addresses I hadn't blocked. My mom wrote a lengthy guilt trip about my dad's health declining without his medication. How he couldn't sleep and his chest hurt constantly. My dad then shot back a short message telling me to stop this immature behavior right away, before it causes serious problems for our family. Nathan pleaded that our parents couldn't afford their mortgage payment without my help, and they might have to move in with him. I forwarded each one to Olivia without responding to them, feeling a strange mix of vindication and exhaustion with each new attempt at manipulation. 3 days later, I received a certified letter from my parents. Inside was a handwritten note from my mom on her monogrammed stationery. Abigail, we don't understand why you're punishing us like this. Yes, we made some jokes in poor taste, but that's what families do. Your dad's heart medication is $450 per month without insurance. Our mortgage is due next week, and we can't cover it without your help. We might lose our condo. Is that what you want? For your elderly parents to be homeless? After all we sacrificed for you? Please stop this cruelty and talk to us. Your dad cries at night, worried about our future. Mom. I nearly laughed out loud at the elderly comment. A bitter sound that echoed in my empty kitchen. They were both 65 and in excellent health. My dad's golf game had never been better, according to the country club photos Nathan had accidentally included in one of those fateful shared folders, showing him triumphantly holding a trophy just last month. I called the pharmacy where my dad filled his prescriptions, my heart racing at my own audacity as I pretended to be my mother. I'm calling about my husband Walter Monroe's heart medication. What's the cost without insurance? I asked, trying to match my mother's slightly higher pitch. Let me check, the pharmacist said. After a moment, it's $42 for a 30-day supply, Mrs. Monroe. Not $450. Another lie stacked atop the mountain of deception. I hung up, knowing I was right all along, but it was a real letdown to see they were still trying to fool me with their obvious fabrications. That evening, Nathan showed up at my office as I was leaving. He looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, clothes rumpled, his normally perfect hair unwashed. For a split second, I felt a pang of sympathy. Abigail, please, he said, stepping in front of me, desperation etched into every line of his face. They're falling apart. Dad's talking about bankruptcy. Mom won't stop crying. That's not my problem, I replied, trying to step around him, my heart hammering against my ribs. The word problem echoed in my head for years. I'd been the family problem solver, the fixer, the rescuer. How can you be so cold? Nathan's voice cracked with emotion. They're our parents. This is destroying them. Are they? I stopped, looking him directly in the eyes. Because real parents don't exploit their children. Real parents don't laugh behind their kids' backs about how stupid and gullible they are. Real parents don't take their daughter's college fund and then mock her for working her way through night school. They made mistakes, but... No, I cut him off, heat rising in my cheeks. A mistake is forgetting a birthday. Sending a text to the wrong person is a mistake. What they did was calculated and cruel. 4 years, Nathan. Years of systematic deception while I sacrificed everything. The condo is going into foreclosure. They can't make the payments without you. He pleaded, following me as I tried to walk to my car. They're going to lose everything. I felt a momentary pang of guilt, my stomach twisting. But then remembered a screenshot I'd saved, just convinced Abigail we're struggling with rent. Meanwhile, we're closing on the lake condo next week. Cheers. My dad's words, accompanied by a champagne emoji that now seemed to mock me. They shouldn't have bought a place they couldn't afford, I said flatly. Clutching my keys so tightly they dug into my palm. That's basic financial responsibility, something they clearly never learned. What about Dad's medication? His heart condition. The prescription that costs $42, not $450? I interrupted, watching his face carefully. He can get a job at Walmart if he needs to cover that. They're always hiring. Nathan's eyes widened in shock, his mouth opening and closing. How did you? I did my research. No more lies, Nathan. I walked past him to my car, unlocking it with a beep that seemed too cheerful for the moment. Tell them to look into government assistance programs. That's what they're there for. Abigail, he called after me, his voice tinged with panic. They're talking about moving in with me. Into my 1-bedroom apartment. I can't handle that. Sarah's already threatening to leave me if they move in. I turned back, one hand on my car door. That sounds like a you problem, Nathan. Welcome to the consequences. It's not so fun when you're the one who has to deal with it, is it? As I drove away, I could see him in my rearview mirror, standing alone in the parking lot. Looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. The weight of his problems wasn't mine to carry anymore. 2 weeks after cutting my family off, I was sitting in a therapy session I'd finally scheduled for myself. Dr. Caroline Frost. A woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Listened as I recounted the whole sordid story, her notepad balanced on her knee. Every day I swing between feeling strong and feeling horrible, I admitted. Twisting a tissue between my fingers until it shredded. Like, yesterday I found out from a mutual friend that my parents had to cancel their country club membership. I actually felt guilty about it for hours. I couldn't sleep, thinking about how embarrassed they must be. That's normal, Dr. Frost said, her voice gentle but firm. You're grieving the family you thought you had. That includes grieving the role you played as their supporter. Your identity was wrapped up in being their financial savior. But they didn't deserve my support, I protested, my voice cracking. They were using me. Laughing at me behind my back. While I worked myself to exhaustion to help them. Both things can be true at once, she replied, leaning forward slightly. They didn't deserve your support, and you can still feel loss about no longer providing it. Feelings don't always align with what we know to be rational. I pondered that while Dr. Frost continued, her words hitting home in a way I hadn't expected. Being the one who takes care of the family was a big part of who you are. Now, you're figuring out your identity without that label. It feels like you're taking away a part of yourself, even if that part wasn't doing you any good. I hadn't thought about it that way, but she was right. 4 or 5 years. I'd tied my worth to being the successful daughter who could support her parents. Who was I now if not their personal bank? The question left me feeling both lost and strangely freed. As I was leaving my session, my phone buzzed with an unexpected call. Uncle Marcus, my dad's brother who lived across the country in Oregon. We weren't close. But I answered out of curiosity, my hand hovering over the reject button. Abigail, it's your Uncle Marcus. I just got a strange call from your dad asking if he and your mom could come live with us for a while. He said you'd cut them off financially. And they were about to lose their home. Is that true? I sighed, leaning against my car in the parking lot. It's complicated, Uncle Marcus. I figured. Your dad has always had a talent for selective storytelling. His tone was dry, with a hint of something that sounded like old pain. Want to tell me your side? I've got time. So I did, explaining everything from the shared cloud storage to the lies about medical expenses. When I finished, there was a long silence. That made me wonder if the call had dropped. I'm not surprised, he finally said, his voice heavy. Your dad tried to pull similar stunts with me years ago. It's why we're not close. I refused to fund his lifestyle after he blew through a loan I gave him for his business venture. That turned out to be a timeshare in Florida. You knew? I felt a wave of betrayal all over again, my free hand clenching into a fist. Why didn't you warn me? Would you have believed me? He asked gently. They had you convinced they were struggling. And you were their hero. Sometimes people have to discover the truth themselves. He was right. I wouldn't have believed him. I would have defended them fiercely. Accused him of jealousy or bitterness. For what it's worth, he added, I told your dad I wouldn't take them in. I suggested they downsize and live within their means. He hung up on me. After calling me a few choice names I won't repeat. After we disconnected, I felt strangely validated. I wasn't crazy for cutting them off. I wasn't a horrible daughter. I was just the latest target of their manipulation. And I'd finally wised up, just as Uncle Marcus had years ago. That evening, I received a text from Nathan from a new number. Mom and Dad are moving into my spare room next week. They're selling the condo. Dad's furious about it. I can't believe this is happening. Sarah is threatening to move out. I didn't respond, though I felt a twinge of sympathy for my brother as I set my phone aside. 3 days later, another text, the condo is on the market. Dad's car got repossessed yesterday. This is getting really bad. Mom won't stop crying. I almost texted back. My fingers were just hanging out above the keys. As if they were looking for some support with the moving costs. But then I remembered a particular screenshot where Nathan had written. Abigail just asked if Dad was doing okay after his doctor's appointment for the heart issue. That doesn't exist. Should have seen her face, so worried. The laughing emoji had been a dagger to my heart. They'd made their choices. Mocking my concern while exploiting it. Now they were living with the consequences. And so was Nathan. My sympathy evaporated like morning dew in summer heat. Week 3 brought an email from a name I didn't recognize. The subject line. Message from your parents. My stomach tightened as I clicked it open. Apparently, they'd enlisted a family friend to reach out since I'd blocked them everywhere. The message detailed how they'd been forced to sell most of their furniture. How my dad's health was deteriorating from the stress. And how they'd had to apply for food stamps, something my proud dad considered humiliating. After years of boasting about his professional success. Walter can barely sleep at night, the email read. Eleanor cries constantly. They don't understand how their daughter could abandon them in their time of need. The email concluded, they just want a chance to talk to you, to explain and apologize. Everyone makes mistakes. Can't you find it in your heart to forgive them? I considered it for all of 5 seconds before hitting delete, my hand surprisingly steady. Their idea of an apology would be whatever they thought might turn the money faucet back on. I was done being manipulated, done being their ATM, done being the dutiful daughter. Who sacrificed her own needs for people who saw her as nothing but a resource. For the first time in years, my money was going toward my future, not their pretend emergencies. I'd started looking at houses in better neighborhoods. I'd booked a vacation, my first in 3 years. I'd even begun dating again. Meeting a kind architect who never made me feel like I had to earn his affection. The guilt was fading with each passing day, replaced by something unexpected, freedom. It felt like breathing fresh air after years of being underwater. Like putting down a heavy backpack I hadn't realized I was carrying. My shoulders literally felt lighter. 6 months after I'd cut off all contact, I arrived home from a business trip to San Francisco. To find my parents sitting on my porch steps. My stomach dropped at the sight of them. A visceral reaction that reminded me of how far I'd come in my healing. My dad has shed some weight, and his strong build now looks a little fragile. Meanwhile, my mom's hair highlights have grown out, exposing her gray roots. They were both wearing clothes I didn't recognize, cheaper looking than their usual designer attire. My first instinct was to turn the car around and drive away, my heart hammering against my ribs. But Dr. Frost and I had discussed this possibility in therapy. I was stronger now. More sure of myself and my boundaries. I could face them without being manipulated. I gripped the steering wheel tightly, took 3 deep breaths. And reminded myself that I was no longer the daughter desperate for their approval. I parked in the driveway and approached slowly, my legs feeling leaden with each step. "What are you doing here?" My voice came out steadier than I expected. "Abigail," my mother's voice cracked, her eyes immediately welling with tears that once would have sent me scrambling to fix whatever had upset her. "Please, we just want to talk. We've learned our lesson. We miss you so much. These past months have been absolute hell," my dad added, his voice lacking its usual commanding tone. "You have no idea what we've been through." I studied them for a moment, searching their faces for any sign of genuine remorse. Something inside me had shifted, I could see their tactics clearly now. Like watching a familiar play where I knew all the lines. I unlocked my door. "You have 5 minutes. That's it." Inside, they perched awkwardly on my couch while I remained standing. Arms crossed protectively over my chest. The confidence I'd built over the past months wrapped around me like armor. "We're sorry," my mom began, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. "We never should have taken advantage of your generosity. We got carried away." My dad nodded soberly. "We've lost everything. The condo, the car, our savings. We had to move in with Nathan, and his place is so small. Your mom has to sleep on a pull-out couch. Do you know what that's doing to her back? The country club revoked our membership," my mom added. As if this were a tragedy of epic proportions. "All our friends there, they don't call anymore. No one invites us to anything. My medication costs have been terrible without your insurance," my dad continued, his hand dramatically clutching at his chest. "Medicare doesn't cover everything. I've had to cut some of my prescriptions in half." I caught them listing all the things they'd lost, just a series of bothersome issues and discomforts. And I was waiting for a real apology that would touch on the real pain they caused. But it never happened. There was no, "We're sorry we hurt you." Or, "We were wrong to mock you," just a recitation of their hardships. And implied blame that I had caused them. "Is that it?" I asked when they finally fell silent, my voice calm, almost clinical. "We want to make things right," my mom said, reaching toward me before thinking better of it when she saw my expression. "We've really suffered, Abigail. We've learned our lesson. We promise." What lesson would that be? I kept my gaze steady on them. They exchanged quick, panicked glances. "That we shouldn't have taken you for granted," my dad finally said. The words sounding rehearsed. Translation: they should have been more careful about getting caught. I almost smiled at how transparent they were now that I could see clearly. "No," I said softly, feeling a certainty settle over me. "You haven't learned anything." "What do you mean?" my mom asked, her voice rising slightly. The familiar note of indignation creeping in. "We came all this way to apologize. We've been driving for hours." "No, you came all this way to tell me how much you've suffered without my money. Not once have you acknowledged how your betrayal made me feel. The humiliation of discovering you all were laughing at me behind my back. The pain of realizing my own parents saw me as nothing but a resource to exploit." "We said we're sorry," my dad protested, color rising in his cheeks. "For getting caught, maybe. Not for what you did." I took a deep breath. feeling the strength of my conviction. In the past 6 months, I've thought a lot about what a healthy family looks like. It's not this. It's not treating your child like an ATM and mocking her behind her back. It's not manipulating someone who loves you. My mother's face hardened, the mask of contrition slipping. So you're just going to keep punishing us over a few jokes? That's very immature, Abigail. This isn't punishment, I replied, feeling a strange calm despite the tension crackling in the air. This is me protecting myself from people who've shown they don't have my best interests at heart. This is me choosing my own well-being for once. We're your parents, my dad said, as if that explained and excused everything. And I was your daughter. Not your personal bank. I moved toward the door, opening it. The gesture unmistakable. I wish you well. I really do. I hope you find a way to live comfortably. Within your means. But I can't be part of your lives anymore. You can't mean that, my mom whispered, tears forming on cue. We need you. We're family. That's the problem. You don't need me. You need what I can provide. There's a difference. Hearing this made me realize how true it is, and it made me feel like all those months of therapy and self-reflection really paid off. My dad stood, anger replacing his earlier contrition, his mask dropping completely. So that's it? After everything we've done for you? After all the sacrifices we made? What exactly have you done for me, Dad? Besides take and take and take? You used my college fund for your investments. You mocked me while I struggled through night school. You treated me like a joke while I worked myself to exhaustion to support you. He had no answer, just sputtering indignation. As they walked out the door, my mom turned back, making one final attempt to manipulate me. You'll regret this, Abigail. Family is all you have in the end. When you're old and alone, you'll wish you hadn't been so selfish. I shook my head, a sad smile touching my lips. No, Mom. Family is supposed to be the people who love you unconditionally. I've built that family with my friends. What you offered was just a transaction, and it was a bad deal. I closed the door and leaned against it, listening to their footsteps retreat down the path, followed by angry murmurs and the slam of car doors. I expected to feel guilt or grief. Instead, I felt an overwhelming sense of peace washing over me, as if a storm had finally passed. The ATM was permanently closed, and for the first time in my adult life, I was truly free to build the life I wanted. Surrounded by people who valued me for who I was, not what I could give them.
I'm Alessia, and at just 20 years old, I found myself sharing a story I never anticipated. As a sophomore in college, I was the quintessential student trying to juggle academics and social life, all while occasionally missing home. However, an unexpected phone call dramatically shifted my reality. Let me take you back to the start. 3 years earlier, when I was only 18, my father died unexpectedly, leaving just my mom and me in the home he had proudly built for us. Thankfully, he had left us financially secure, with savings and no mortgage. I believed we'd manage, just the two of us. My acceptance to an out-of-state college was a mix of joy and sadness. My mother encouraged me to pursue my dreams, believing it was what my dad would have wanted. So off I went, returning only for school breaks. Initially, everything appeared normal. Mom and I kept in touch through regular video calls, and she seemed to be coping well. Then, a few months ago, she shocked me during a call. "Alessia, honey, I've met someone," she exclaimed with unusual excitement. "His name is William, and we're getting married." The news of her marrying a man she'd only known for 4 months was a jolt. I tried to be supportive, but deep down, something didn't sit right. Despite my reservations, William moved into our family home, occupying the space that once belonged to my dad. I focused on my studies, trying to suppress the uneasy feelings creeping in. Then, everything came to a head with a disturbing phone call from Mrs. Stewart, our longtime neighbor. "Alessia, is that you?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. "Something strange is happening at your house. There's been a constant flow of people moving things out and new items in. And I haven't seen your mother in over a week. Frantically, I tried to reach Mom but got no response. Her phone went straight to voicemail, and after multiple attempts, it was disconnected. Panic engulfed me. I rushed to get emergency leave from college and caught the first train home, the scenery blurring outside as I frantically left voicemails for Mom. The train ride seemed eternal. When I finally arrived and approached our street, my heart sank. I trembled as I saw an unfamiliar car in the driveway of the house, where Dad used to measure my growth on the kitchen doorframe. Everything was painfully different, and I braced myself for what was to come. As I walked towards the house I grew up in, the flower beds that my mom had always meticulously maintained looked noticeably neglected. Nearing the porch, I saw a couple acting as though they belonged there. The woman was watering the sparse remnants of Mom's petunias, while the man tinkered with the porch light. "Excuse me," I called out, my voice shaky. "What are you doing at my house?" They turned, sharing a look of confusion, before the man responded. "Your house? I'm sorry, but we purchased this property a few days ago." He quickly went inside and returned with a folder, handing me documents. Everything signed and notarized. The seller was Catherine. "Is that your mother?" With trembling hands, I took the papers. There it was, Mom's signature on a sales contract dated just 3 days prior. "There must be some mistake," I murmured, disbelief clouding my thoughts. The couple exchanged uneasy glances. The woman, with a sympathetic expression, stepped forward. "Listen, we had no idea there was any problem. Everything about the sale was above board." I barely heard her as I dialed Mom's number again, heart pounding. This time she answered. "Mom, what the hell is going on? There are people here saying they've bought our house. Please tell me this is a mistake." "Alessia," Mom's voice was unsettlingly calm and detached. "It's my house. The deed was in my name, and I had every right to sell it. William and I are going abroad." The floor seemed to drop away beneath me. "Your house? Dad built that house for us. Where am I supposed to stay during school breaks? How could you do this without talking to me?" "Oh, sweetie," her tone now condescending. "You're an adult. You can take care of yourself. Your father left everything to me, not you." The will was very clear. My mind reeled as she continued. "I've sold the furniture and appliances. As for your personal belongings..." She paused, and I could hear papers rustling. "I've moved them to a storage unit. I'm texting you the details now." My phone buzzed with the text as the reality sunk in. The new owners, likely uncomfortable with the unfolding drama, went inside, leaving me alone on the sidewalk. I drove to the storage facility on the town's outskirts, a stark place of metal doors and concrete walls. When I lifted the door to my unit, the sight was heart-wrenching. My belongings were carelessly thrown inside, with no semblance of order. My books lay scattered, many damaged, and the scrapbook I had made with Dad was tossed aside, its spine broken. "No," I whispered, rushing to salvage a pile of photos from a trash bag. They were wrinkled and creased, some beyond saving. My clothes were stuffed into more bags, winter coats mixed with summer dresses, clean tangled with dirty. Beneath a pile, I found the teddy bear Dad had given me on my 5th birthday, now crushed under a heavy load. Standing amidst the chaos of my scattered memories, I felt the sting of tears as the gravity of Mom's actions truly hit home. When I retrieved the teddy bear, one of its eyes was barely hanging on by a thread. Shaking, I pulled out my phone and dialed Grandma, the only person who could understand. I spilled everything to her. The sale of the house, the chaotic storage unit, my sudden displacement. Grandma listened in silence until I had finished. Then, after a heavy sigh, she spoke with a tight anger in her voice. "That ungrateful daughter of mine," she said sharply. "Alessia, listen. Come to my house right now." "But my things..." I started to protest. "We'll handle your things. I'm calling a moving company right now. They'll send over a mini truck. Just start gathering everything up, okay? We'll sort it out at my place." 2 hours later, I was following a small rental truck down the highway to Grandma's home in the next town over. She was waiting on the porch as we pulled up, enveloping me in a fierce hug the moment I stepped out of my car. We spent the day trying to contact Mom, but every call went straight to voicemail. Grandma's messages grew increasingly frustrated, but we received no reply. "Don't you worry about a thing." Grandma comforted me that evening as we sat in her kitchen, sipping hot chocolate like when I was a child. "You can stay here whenever you need, holidays, weekends, anytime. This is your home now." That night, in the quiet of Grandma's guest room, I made the mistake of checking social media. There was Mom, posting photos from a lavish resort in Europe with William, both of them by a pool, cocktails in hand, without a care in the world. My vision blurred with tears as I hastily blocked her on every platform I could think of. If she could discard our relationship as easily as she had discarded my belongings, then I could erase her from my life, just as simple. The next years flew by in a blur of college classes, part-time jobs, and weekend visits to Grandma's. She was my rock, always there to talk about my studies or remind me to eat well. We chatted several times a week, and she never failed to support me. It was a normal Tuesday morning during my final year of college when everything changed again. I received a call from Mrs. Edwards, Grandma's neighbor. "Alessia, honey," her voice cracked. "Your grandmother had a heart attack last night. The paramedics tried, but..." Her voice trailed off. The world seemed to stop. I remember little about the drive to Grandma's town, only that I somehow made it. The house was just as it had been on my last visit, with her wind chime tinkling on the porch and her gardening gloves still draped over the railing. Handling the funeral arrangements was tough. People asked if I would inform Mom, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. The thought of seeing her, of dealing with her now, was too much. I knew that in a small town, word would get around. Someone would likely tell her. The funeral itself was beautiful, simple yet elegant, filled with Grandma's favorite flowers. As I stood there accepting condolences, it felt like the entire town had come to say goodbye. As I stood receiving condolences at the funeral, a tall man in a crisp suit approached me. "Miss Claire?" he said, extending his business card. "I'm Henry, your grandmother's attorney. I need to speak with you about her will at your earliest convenience." I took the card, a bit dazed. "Should we wait for my mother?" I asked, half expecting her to appear soon, likely to claim her share. Mr. Henry shook his head. "That won't be necessary. The will concerns only one person, you." The following day, I sat in his office, my emotions a numb whirl as he began to read from the will. "To my beloved granddaughter, Claire, I leave my entire estate." The words hit me like waves, leaving me more adrift with each sentence. He then handed me another letter, this one personal. My hands trembled as I opened it, the paper carrying the faint scent of Grandma's perfume. "My dearest Claire," it began, "if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer there to tell you in person how proud I am of you and how much I love you. I need you to understand why I've made this decision. When your mother chose to abandon you for a man she barely knew, it broke my heart. I had initially planned to divide my estate between the two of you, but after seeing her squander your father's legacy and discard the home he built with such love, I couldn't trust her with the inheritance I've spent decades building." The letter continued, "You, my sweet girl, have shown strength, resilience, and grace beyond your years. You've stayed focused on your education, just as your father wanted. I choose you, Claire, not just as my heir, but as the daughter of my heart. The house and all my savings, amounting to $410,000, are yours. Use them wisely to build the life you deserve. Know that wherever I am, I'm watching over you with love and pride. All my love, Grandma." After the funeral, the reality of my new responsibilities set in. I still had a year of college to complete, and Grandma's house couldn't just sit empty. Property taxes and utilities would pile up, and an empty house could attract trouble. After much consideration, I contacted a local realtor, Juliet, to manage renting it out. "I'll send you weekly updates," Juliet promised as I returned to college. "And I'll call immediately if there are any issues." The first couple of months went smoothly. Juliet found a nice young couple expecting a baby who signed a 1-year lease. I threw myself back into my studies, trying to focus on finals and job applications rather than the void Grandma had left. Then came a disturbing call from Juliet. "Alessia, we've had an incident at the house. A woman showed up yesterday, causing quite a scene. She was screaming that she was the rightful owner of the house, trying to break in through the back door. The tenants were terrified. They had to call the police." I closed my eyes, knowing what was coming next. "What did she look like?" I asked. "Middle-aged, well-dressed, but a bit disheveled, dark hair, about 5 feet 7 inches. "That's my mother," I said flatly, resignation sinking in. "And she's not going to stop." I was right. Within days, my phone began to explode with calls from unknown numbers. I ignored them, but the voicemails accumulated. "Alessia, this is your mother. Call me back immediately. We need to discuss the inheritance. You can't ignore me forever, young lady. Call me back or I'll make things very difficult for you." One by one, I blocked the numbers, steeling myself against the storm I knew was just beginning. Despite blocking her repeatedly, my mother kept finding new ways to contact me. This constant worry began to disrupt my sleep, and I would jolt awake at every buzz of my phone. My grades suffered as a result, and my professors could tell I was distracted in class. About a week after the troubling incident at the house, I was heading to my morning class when I heard a familiar voice call out, "Alessia." I froze. There she was by the student center, acting as if it was perfectly normal for her to be there. Her appearance had changed. Gone were the designer outfits, replaced by ill-fitting, off-the-rack clothes. Her hair, usually flawless, frizzed in the morning humidity. "I'll make a scene right here if I have to," she threatened loudly. "Is that what you want? Your mother screaming in front of all your classmates about how you stole her inheritance." People were starting to notice. The last thing I wanted was to become campus gossip. "Fine," I said through gritted teeth. "There's a cafe around the corner. 15 minutes. That's all you get." The cafe was bustling with the morning crowd, but Mom found us a corner table. I sat down, my bag clutched in my lap, poised to leave at any moment. "Let's cut to the chase," she began, without even a pretense of interest in how I was doing. "I know about the inheritance. I was her daughter, her only daughter. You're just the granddaughter. Obviously, this inheritance needs to be split between us, 60/40ths. It's the right thing to do, and you know it. Like how you did the right thing when you sold Dad's house." I retorted, the words sharp and bitter. "The house he built for us, the one that should have been half mine." Her face turned red with anger. "That was completely different. I was the owner, just like Grandma was the owner of her house. And she chose who to leave it to. This is not the same thing at all." I snapped back. Mom's voice grew louder, attracting glances from nearby tables. "I will not let you steal what's rightfully mine. I'll sue you if I have to." "Go ahead," I said, though my hands trembled under the table. "The will is clear." She then switched tactics, her expression softening into a manipulative guise. "After everything I've done for you, Alessia, I paid for your college education." I couldn't help but laugh. "You never worked a day in your life, Mom. You transferred money from Dad's account to pay for my tuition, money he left for my education. How dare you?" She slammed her hand on the table, making the cups rattle. "You ungrateful little—" "I'm done here." I stood up, grabbing my bag. "Don't contact me again." I pushed through the door, her stream of obscenities following me out onto the street. Several customers had their phones out, recording the scene. Great, just what I needed. Back in my dorm, I made the mistake of checking social media. Mom had already posted a novel-length rant. "I never thought my daughter would betray me like this," she wrote. "She manipulated my poor mother, turned her against me, and stole what should have been mine. My flesh and blood, conspiring behind my back." The comment section turned into a battlefield. Mom's siblings and cousins were calling me names and demanding I do the right thing. But Dad's family fought back fiercely. "Catherine, we all remember how you abandoned Claire and ran off with that man," my Aunt Susan wrote. sold Claire's childhood home out from under her, and jetted off to Europe. Shame on you. A few more distant relatives and family friends tried to be the voice of reason amidst the chaos. The online quarrels escalated, with one commenter pointedly noting, "If you're so sure you have a claim, take it to court." Throwing accusations on Facebook isn't going to change a legal will. Despite this, Mom's posts grew increasingly dramatic. She portrayed herself as the victim of an elaborate conspiracy between Grandma and me, conveniently omitting the years of neglect and disinterest she had shown towards me. After graduation, I returned to Grandma's house, my house now. The tenants had recently moved out, leaving the place in surprisingly good condition. As I stood in the quiet living room, I could almost hear Grandma's laughter echoing off the walls. With the inheritance, I had the luxury to take a few months off before job hunting. The house needed some minor repairs, a squeaky floorboard here, a dripping faucet there. It felt good to busy my hands with these tasks, making the space truly my own. One day, while I was painting the kitchen, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I thought it might be one of Grandma's old neighbors dropping by. I wiped my hands on my overalls and opened the door, only to feel my stomach drop. There stood Mom, a shadow of her former polished self. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, and her mascara smeared. "Alessia," she sobbed, barging past me into the house before I could stop her. "You have to help me. I have nowhere else to go." "What are you talking about?" I asked, staying by the open door to keep my escape route clear. "William left me," she wailed, collapsing onto Grandma's old couch. "He took everything. I'm broke, Alessia. I need a place to stay, just until I get back on my feet, and maybe alone." I stared at her in disbelief. "You've got to be kidding me. I'm your mother," she cried. "You can't just leave me on the street. Like you left me?" I replied, my words sharp and cold. "Like you ran off with William and all that money from Dad's house." She sat up straighter, wiping her eyes. "That's different. You were an adult already. You weren't going to starve, right? Because Grandma took me in. The same Grandma whose house you're now trying to guilt your way into. You don't understand." She was crying now. "William, he forced me to sell the house. He was controlling and manipulative. He bullied me into everything. I was a victim too." I pulled out my phone, opened her social media profile, and held it up. "Really? Is that why you posted this yesterday?" There it was, a photo of her and William at a fancy restaurant, his arms around her as she beamed at the camera. The caption read, "Date night with my soulmate." And this one from last week? I swiped to another photo, then another, showcasing her so-called miserable and bullied existence. Mom's face changed. The tears stopped instantly, replaced by a harsh, ugly expression. "You little trash," she snarled, standing up. "I should have had an abortion when I had the chance. You're nothing but greedy and ungrateful. Get out." My voice was shaking, but I held my ground. "I never want to see you again. Ever. You'll regret this," she spat as she stormed past me. "You're just like your father, selfish and—" I slammed the door in her face, cutting off whatever cruel thing she was about to say next. Through the wood, I could hear her continuing to scream, but I was done letting her chaos disrupt my peace. I slid down to sit on the floor, my back pressed against the door, waiting until she finally walked away. The fallout from Mom's visit was predictable. My phone was soon bombarded with messages from relatives who hadn't reached out in years, all suddenly deeply concerned about poor Catherine and her troubles. Each day brought a new wave of guilt trips and accusations. Juliet reported Mom was crying herself to sleep. Cousin Margot texted long messages about family duties and Christian forgiveness, and Uncle Parker wrote an entire email accusing me of tearing the family apart. That was the last straw. I decided I had enough of being silently judged and misunderstood. I sat at my computer and began to type out everything. Every detail from the day she sold our family home to her recent attempts to manipulate her way into Grandma's house. I included photos of the storage unit where she carelessly dumped my belongings, screenshots of her lavish European vacation posts made right after she left me homeless, and, as the final blow, a scanned copy of Grandma's heartfelt letter. I posted it all publicly, determined to stop hiding and let the truth speak for itself. The impact was immediate. The guilt-tripping messages halted, and even Mom's staunchest defenders fell silent. No one could counter the weight of Grandma's own words. That was 7 months ago. Since then, I've completed the renovations on the house. Nothing too extravagant, just enough to make it truly mine while preserving the essence of Grandma that made it feel like home. I secured a good position at a local marketing firm and began laying down the roots of my new life. Through the family grapevine, I occasionally hear snippets about Mom. She's living in a modest apartment in the next state, barely making ends meet. William did indeed leave her, taking most of their assets with him. She's had to sell her designer clothes and jewelry and, for the first time in her life, is working as a retail clerk. Sometimes, while sitting in Grandma's garden on tranquil evenings, I reflect on how Mom might have envisioned everything playing out in her favor. She probably thought she could burn through Dad's money with William, secure in the belief that Grandma's inheritance would be there as a safety net. She lived in the moment, spending without a thought for tomorrow. One day, I found an old photo album in the attic. There was a picture of Mom holding me as a baby, both of us smiling at the camera. For a moment, I felt a pang of longing for things to have been different. But then I remembered Grandma's words. Sometimes the hardest thing and the right thing are the same. I closed the album and placed it back in the attic. Maybe someday I'll want to look at those photos again, but for now, I'm focused on the future. My future, built on my terms, in this house filled with memories of the people who truly loved me, consistently and unconditionally.
Nolan is going to be CEO? Are you serious? I'm the one who saved this hotel from complete disaster. My voice filled the newly updated meeting room, echoing against the modern mountain-inspired decor I had carefully chosen after many late nights. Diana, my mother, flicked her manicured hand dismissively, her diamond tennis bracelet catching the light. The gesture stung like a physical blow. Elaine, sweetie, your brother has natural leadership qualities that you simply don't possess. You're too caught up in the details, she explained with the condescending tone she'd perfected over decades. That's when Nolan sauntered in, 20 minutes late as usual. Designer coffee in one hand, phone in the other. He didn't even bother to hide that infuriating smirk I'd been seeing since he was in diapers. Hey sis, don't look so devastated, he said, dropping into the leather chair at the head of the table. We need someone handling all those spreadsheets and checklists while I focus on vision and growth strategies. My name is Elaine Harrington. At 52, with an MBA and Cornell Hotel School degree hanging on my wall, I never imagined I'd be fighting for recognition in my own family's business. After building a stellar 20-year career in hotel management in Chicago, I'd sacrificed everything, my Gold Coast condo, my executive position, my entire life, to return to Colorado and rescue our failing family hotel. The bitter irony? I was the only one with actual hospitality credentials and experience, while my 29-year-old brother Nolan had bounced between jobs like a pinball, never sticking with anything longer than his attention span, approximately 8 months. 8 months ago, my father Victor called me, his voice breaking, confessing they were weeks away from bankruptcy. The bank was threatening foreclosure on the hotel that had been in our family for generations. My stomach had twisted into knots, but I didn't hesitate. I sold my luxury condo overlooking Lake Michigan, liquidated my carefully curated investment portfolio, and flew home the next day. What greeted me was heartbreaking. The Mountain Pine Lodge felt like it was stuck in the 90s, worn floral bedspreads, no social media action, and online reviews. That made me cringe as someone in the industry. Avoid at all costs, one reviewer had written. Smells like my grandmother's attic, said another. I attacked the problems methodically, the way I'd successfully turned around struggling properties. For my hotel chain,
My days stretched into nights as I hunched over financial spreadsheets, negotiating with suppliers for better rates, and completely retraining our demoralized staff. I felt the ache in my shoulders and the burn in my eyes, but pushed through it all. I leveraged every industry connection I'd built over 2 decades to get us featured in prestigious travel publications. I personally selected every detail, from the locally crafted furniture to the luxury bath amenities, creating an authentic mountain experience that guests couldn't stop raving about. And it worked. The transformation was remarkable. Our bookings doubled, then tripled. The Mountain Pine Lodge transformed from a 2-star embarrassment into the destination everyone was talking about. For the first time in years, we were not just breaking even but generating significant profit. Yet standing here now, watching Nolan casually browse through the quarterly report I worked so hard on, while our parents shower him with praise for everything I built from scratch, it really hit me hard. All my skills, my dedication, and my results just don't seem to count for anything in their eyes. The worst part? They're announcing his promotion at tonight's all-staff meeting, the very same meeting where I was scheduled to present our record-breaking quarterly results. I can feel Gabriela Rodriguez's sympathetic gaze from across the room. As head of housekeeping for 15 years, she knows exactly who turned this place around. All around us, the staff exchange knowing glances. They've witnessed my 18-hour days and Nolan's occasional appearances for photo ops. They know the truth, but like me, they're forced to stand here watching this charade unfold, pretending this travesty is somehow normal or fair. Let me give you some background on how we arrived at this point. The Mountain Pine Lodge has been in the Harrington family since my grandfather built it in 1971. I practically grew up running through these hallways, learning every aspect of the business from the ground up. While other kids played with dolls, I was helping my mother check in guests and watching my father troubleshoot maintenance issues. The hotel wasn't just a business, it was our legacy, our home, our identity. I fell in love with hospitality standing behind that front desk, feeling a surge of pride each time a guest told us they'd had an unforgettable stay. But Nolan? He was different in every way possible. 23 years younger than me, a surprise addition to the family when I was already in college, he never showed the slightest interest in the hotel. While I was pulling all-nighters studying revenue management strategies at Cornell, he was bouncing between elite private universities, switching majors from marketing to communications to business, before dropping out altogether to find his authentic path, whatever that meant. Victor and Diana never seemed troubled by any of this. He's just exploring his options, they'd say, indulgently. He's so creative and free-spirited. Every semester's tuition down the drain and every new career he dropped, they just nodded in agreement and continued to support him financially. Meanwhile, I was building my career in Chicago, methodically working my way up. From front desk manager to operations director to regional manager for a prestigious hotel chain. I oversaw 12 properties and a staff of hundreds. Each promotion, each industry award I received was acknowledged with lukewarm congratulations from my family. That's nice, dear, but when are you coming back home? When are you settling down? Found anyone special yet? The unspoken message was clear, my professional achievements would never be enough. When Dad called about the hotel's financial troubles, I immediately recognized what needed to be done. The property was hemorrhaging money, outdated systems, inefficient processes, and absolutely no coherent marketing strategy. Online reviews were brutal, stuck in the 1990s. Desperately needs updating, not worth half the price. Every harsh comment hit me like a direct shot at our family's legacy. I took an emergency leave from my position in Chicago, which eventually became a permanent resignation. My colleagues thought I was having a midlife crisis, throwing away a stellar career for a failing hotel in a small mountain town. But this wasn't just any hotel, it was my birthright, my foundation. The first month was pure damage control, repairing broken equipment, implementing a modern booking system, and training staff on contemporary customer service standards. I withdrew from my retirement accounts to replace the threadbare carpeting and completely redesign the lobby. Each dollar I invested was carefully calculated. For maximum return on investment, I approached this rescue with the same analytical precision that had earned me recognition in the industry. What truly infuriates me is that Nolan was nowhere to be found during this critical period. He was off in Denver, supposedly building our social media presence. But his Instagram showed him at exclusive parties and restaurant openings. He'd breeze in for Sunday family dinners, casually toss out buzzwords like disruption and experiential marketing, then disappear again. Yet somehow, in our parents' eyes, his occasional vague suggestions carried the same weight as my round-the-clock efforts and proven results. I kept telling myself it would all be worth it in the end. That once they saw the dramatic turnaround in occupancy rates, the glowing reviews, the substantial increase in revenue, they'd finally recognize my value. My chest tightens thinking about how naive I was. I should have known better than to expect validation from people who had spent a lifetime overlooking my contributions. The past 3 weeks have been an absolute nightmare. Nolan struts around the hotel like he owns the place, making random changes without the slightest understanding of how hospitality actually works. My jaw clenches every time I see him waltz through the lobby, high-fiving staff who force smiles in return. Just yesterday, he decided to completely cut our award-winning continental breakfast service to optimize costs, apparently oblivious to the fact that our breakfast ratings are one of our biggest competitive advantages. I felt my blood pressure spike as I pulled up the guest satisfaction data on my tablet. Look at these numbers, Nolan. Breakfast is mentioned positively in 78% of our 5-star reviews, I said, pointing to the colorful graphs I'd prepared. He barely glanced at my screen before laughing, that irritating chuckle that made my skin crawl. Numbers aren't everything, sis. We need to disrupt the traditional hotel breakfast paradigm. He actually used the word paradigm while sipping his $9 artisanal cold brew that the hotel budget was somehow covering. But what really pushed me over the edge happened this morning. I walked into the staff room to find Gabriela Rodriguez, our head of housekeeping who's been with us for 15 years, fighting back tears. Her hands were shaking as she clutched her termination papers. Nolan was standing over her, scrolling through his phone as if firing a dedicated employee was just another item to check off his to-do list. His reason? She wasn't flexible enough about his new scheduling system, a completely impractical system that would have left us dangerously understaffed during our 11 a.m. peak checkout rush. You can't do this, I said, feeling heat rise to my face. Gabriela knows this hotel better than anyone. Your scheduling system violates basic hospitality staffing principles. I managed to intervene and save her job, but the look of humiliation on Gabriela's face when she whispered gracias, Ms. Harrington will haunt me for a long time. No one should have to feel that vulnerable in a workplace they've dedicated their life to. I tried reasoning with Victor and Diana. I brought detailed spreadsheets showing our progress, printed guest reviews praising our recent improvements, even financial projections for the next quarter that showed continued growth. I'd spent hours compiling this data, formatting it to be crystal clear even to non-hospitality people. Victor just stared into his coffee cup, refusing to meet my eyes. Diana patted my hand with that condescending touch I'd grown to resent. Elaine, dear, just let your brother take his time to figure things out. He's got some great ideas for what's ahead. Not everyone looks at life like you do with all those spreadsheets. I felt something crack inside me. 20 years of industry experience reduced to seeing the world through spreadsheets. I bit my tongue until I tasted blood. That evening, driving home in a fog of frustration, that's when I saw it, a large for sale sign on the old Riverside Lodge. The wooden sign swayed slightly in the mountain breeze, catching the golden evening light. Something made me pull over. This property had been our main competitor for years before falling into disrepair last season, when the owners retired. I got out of my car, my heart suddenly racing with possibilities. The property had incredible potential, better views than Mountain Pine, closer to the ski slopes, and a much larger spa space. The stone exterior was weathered but solid, with the kind of authentic mountain character that corporate hotels spend millions trying to replicate. I walked around the perimeter, peering through dusty windows. Sure, it needed significant work, but I could already see exactly what to do with each space. My mind whirled with floor plans and design concepts. The grand lobby could be opened up to showcase the mountain views. The outdated restaurant could become a farm-to-table showcase for local producers. I sat in my car for almost an hour, staring at that for sale sign and thinking about every time my parents had overlooked me in favor of Nolan. Every achievement dismissed. Every suggestion second-guessed, every contribution minimized. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. Something inside me snapped, or maybe it finally clicked into place. A clarity I hadn't felt in years washed over me. With shaking hands, I called my realtor right there in the parking lot. The words tumbled out as I explained what I wanted. To my surprise, she told me the owners were eager to sell. The property had been on the market for months, and thanks to my substantial savings and stellar credit rating from years of financial prudence, I could make a competitive offer immediately. "I can have the paperwork ready tonight," she said, the excitement in her voice matching my own. "And we can schedule a viewing for 9 a.m. tomorrow." By the time I drove home, my mind was racing with plans and possibilities. For the first time in months, I felt a surge of energy coursing through my veins. I wouldn't have to watch Nolan destroy everything I'd built. Instead, I would build something entirely new, something that was completely mine. Let them see exactly what they gave up when they chose him over me. The next few months were packed with a whirlwind of busy happenings. I poured everything, my savings, my expertise, my soul, into transforming the old Riverside Lodge into something extraordinary. While Nolan was busy posting selfies from business networking events at Mountain Pine Lodge, I was working alongside contractors, redesigning spaces, and carefully building a team of top-tier hospitality professionals I'd connected with throughout my career. My days started at 5 a.m. and often ended well past midnight. My back ached from crawling through dusty spaces with contractors. My hands became rough from handling samples and materials. But there was an exhilarating freedom in making every decision without having to justify it to anyone. I named it the Summit, perhaps a bit on the nose, but I wanted everyone in town to know exactly what I was aiming for. The highest peak of luxury and service, towering above the competition. Word spread through town like wildfire. Some people whispered that I was being spiteful, competing with my own family. Others, especially those who'd worked with me at Mountain Pine and witnessed my dedication, quietly cheered me on. Tessa Chin, who'd worked at the front desk of Mountain Pine for 12 years, was one of the first to reach out. "Ms. Harrington, I heard about your new venture. If you're hiring, I'd love to be considered." One by one, the most talented staff from Mountain Pine began discreetly sending their resumes. My parents tried guilt-tripping me at first. "How could you do this to your brother? To us?" Diana would ask during our increasingly awkward and rare family dinners, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. I just smiled and changed the subject, refusing to take the bait. My father would sit in stony silence, occasionally shaking his head, as if I'd betrayed some sacred family code. Meanwhile, Nolan's mismanagement was taking its predictable toll on Mountain Pine Lodge. Their TripAdvisor rankings started plummeting, complaints about inconsistent service, unaddressed maintenance issues, even cleanliness problems. 3 longtime staff members quit within the first month of his leadership. I heard through industry channels that they'd had to slash their rates by 40% just to maintain basic occupancy levels. The summit's grand opening was held exactly 6 months after that fateful day. In the Mountain Pine meeting room, the transformed property gleamed under the clear Colorado sky, strings of elegant lights illuminating the stone exterior. Every detail had been meticulously planned, from the locally crafted welcome cocktails to the carefully curated playlist filling the space with energy. I'll never forget my family's faces when they walked in, Diana's tight smile barely hiding her shock, Victor's wide eyes taking in the packed house full of influential local figures and travel journalists, and Nolan's barely concealed anger when he saw his former staff members now dressed in the summit's elegant uniforms. The local paper was there taking photos, and a regional travel blogger was live streaming interviews with delighted guests about Aspen's exciting new luxury destination. I caught Marcus Bennett, the influential editor of Alpine Luxury Travel magazine, nodding appreciatively as he toured the property. "You're deliberately trying to destroy us," Nolan hissed when he cornered me by the bar, his breath smelling of expensive bourbon. His designer shirt had a small stain that he hadn't noticed. "This is a direct attack on our family, on our legacy." I met his gaze steadily, feeling surprisingly calm. "No, Nolan," I replied, keeping my voice even. "This isn't about destroying anything. This is me succeeding despite our family's best efforts to hold me back." The contrast between the two hotels couldn't have been more stark. While Mountain Pine Lodge was having a hard time with maintenance and service quality, the Summit was making a name for itself with its unique eco-friendly programs and high-end amenities. Every concept I'd dreamed of implementing at the family hotel, but had been dismissed as too expensive or unnecessary, was now a reality here, from the farm-to-table restaurant featuring local ranchers to the state-of-the-art spa facilities that were already booked solid for weeks. Everything was exactly as I'd envisioned, and it felt intoxicating. But success brought its own set of challenges. Other hotels in the area started copying our innovative online booking system. Some folks in town, old friends of my parents who'd known me since childhood, started whispering about how I was tearing the family apart and betraying my roots. Even some of my loyal guests from Mountain Pine Lodge expressed guilt about choosing sides in what they perceived as a family feud. The real challenges came rolling in as the Summit gained momentum in the market. My former vendors from Mountain Pine Lodge started calling with apologetic voices. "Ms. Harrington, we value your business, but we've been told we have to choose." Diana had quite the social circle in town, built over decades of charity events and committees. And suddenly some longtime family friends stopped meeting me for our usual coffee dates, making thin excuses about scheduling conflicts. I even lost my spot on the local tourism board, a position I'd earned through years of industry expertise. The official explanation was a vague conflict of interest, but the board chairman's uncomfortable expression told me everything I needed to know about who had applied pressure. I wasn't going to let the trivial antics of local politics throw a wrench in everything I've built with my own hands. When local vendors hesitated, I found better ones in Denver who were eager for our business. When longtime associates suddenly became distant, I focused on building new relationships with people who valued professionalism over gossip. When the tourism board dropped me, I redirected that energy into forming direct partnerships with ski tour operators and adventure companies who could send clients directly to our door. Every obstacle just fueled my determination. Each roadblock pushed me to think more creatively, to work harder, to prove that I didn't need their approval or support to succeed. For the first time in my life, I wasn't seeking validation from my family, I was creating my own path, on my own terms. Then came the true test of my resolve. One crisp autumn morning, I glanced up from my desk to find Victor and Diana standing in my office doorway, their faces etched with worry. The atmosphere between us crackled with unspoken tension. Elaine, we need to talk, Victor said, his normally commanding voice subdued. I could see the toll the past months had taken on him, new lines around his eyes. A slight stoop to his shoulders that hadn't been there before. I gestured to the chairs across from my desk, the elegant, custom-made furniture I'd selected specifically for this office that overlooked the mountains. Please, sit down. They settled uncomfortably, exchanging nervous glances. Diana clutched her designer handbag like a shield. The irony wasn't lost on me, my parents, who had always been the ones in power, now sitting awkwardly in my territory. Clearly here to ask for something. The bank is threatening to call in Mountain Pine's loans, Victor finally admitted, his fingers nervously adjusting his cufflinks. Nolan's approach hasn't worked out quite as we hoped. Diana leaned forward, her voice taking on that familiar persuasive tone she'd perfected over decades of getting her way. We're not asking you to come back as CEO. Of course. Just to help guide Nolan, show him the ropes. He respects your expertise, even if he doesn't always show it. I felt a strange calm wash over me, replacing the hurt and anger that had been my constant companions for months. We're family, Diana continued, her eyes glistening with practiced tears. You can't just let the hotel fail. Your grandfather's legacy. My hands rested steadily on my desk as I met their eyes. I offered to help 8 months ago. I replied, my voice level and firm. I sold my condo, emptied my savings accounts, and put my entire career on hold. I gave you a detailed turnaround plan based on 20 years of industry experience. You chose Nolan instead. I let the words sink in before continuing. You made your choice. Now you have to live with the consequences. Victor shifted tactics, his voice dropping to that quiet, authoritative tone he used when he wanted to be taken seriously. Think about your grandfather's legacy, Elaine, he said, gesturing to the old black and white photo of Mountain Pine Lodge on my wall, the only memento I'd brought from my parents' house. That hotel has been in our family for generations. Your grandfather built it with his bare hands. I felt a flash of heat rise to my cheeks. And I tried to preserve that legacy, I responded, unable to keep the edge from my voice. I worked 18-hour days to save it. I modernized systems, retrained staff, and personally oversaw every aspect of its revival. You're the ones who handed it to someone who treats it like his personal playground and Instagram backdrop. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to crush us all. Diana's perfectly manicured nails tapped nervously against her bag. Victor stared out the window at the mountains, as if seeking answers in their ancient peaks. After they left, the whispers around town intensified. I was the ungrateful daughter, the bitter spinster sister, the woman who'd turned against her own family out of spite. Some days, those rumors stung more deeply than I'd ever admit aloud. I'd pick up on parts of conversations that would just cut off as soon as I walked into the cafe nearby. And I'd notice people giving me side-eye at the supermarket. But every morning, I'd walk into the summit's soaring lobby, feel the energy of a well-run hotel humming around me, see my vision realized in every detail. From the hand-selected artwork to the custom signature scent. And know with absolute certainty that I'd made the right choice. My team became my chosen family. Many were former Mountain Pine employees who had jumped ship, fed up with Nolan's chaotic management and constant pivoting. Gabriela Rodriguez now led our housekeeping department with the efficiency and attention to detail that had made her invaluable for 15 years. Tessa Chin transformed our front desk operations with innovations she'd never been allowed to implement at Mountain Pine. They understood that what we were building wasn't about revenge, it was about excellence. About creating something meaningful that we could all take genuine pride in. We weren't just running a hotel, we were crafting experiences that guests would remember for years to come. The defining moment arrived during the annual Colorado Luxury Hotels Awards ceremony. The summit had been nominated for Best New Boutique Hotel, while Mountain Pine Lodge was conspicuously absent. from any category for the first time in decades. My heart pounded as I sat in the ballroom surrounded by my team, all of us dressed in our finest. The room sparkled with crystal chandeliers and the nervous energy of hospitality professionals who understood exactly how much these recognitions mattered. And the winner for Best New Boutique Hotel is. The presenter paused dramatically, the summit, Aspen. The table erupted in cheers as my team jumped to their feet. I felt Gabriella squeeze my hand as I rose, smoothing down my carefully selected midnight blue gown. Walking toward the stage, I caught sight of two familiar figures standing in the shadows at the back of the room, Victor and Diana, who had shown up unannounced. The sight of them momentarily knocked the wind from my lungs. They'd attended this ceremony for years, always expecting to support Mountain Pine Lodge. Now they stood rigid and uncomfortable, watching their daughter accept an award their hotel hadn't even qualified for. Diana's eyes were filled with tears. She was trying not to cry. And Victor seemed like he'd aged years since our last argument at the office. Nolan was nowhere to be seen. He'd stopped attending industry events months ago, dismissing them as boring hospitality circle jerks that weren't worth his time. Everyone in that ballroom knew what this moment represented. The student had officially surpassed the teacher. The too detail-oriented daughter had built something far superior to the family legacy they'd refused to entrust her with. As I accepted the Crystal Award, feeling its substantial weight in my hands, I thanked my incredible team, our loyal guests, and even acknowledged Mountain Pine Lodge, where I first fell in love with hospitality as a little girl. I felt the room's collective intake of breath at my subtle dig. Some shifted uncomfortably in their seats, while others nodded in understanding. But the true game changer came after the ceremony. Marcus Bennett, editor-in-chief of Alpine Luxury Travel magazine, approached me with an extended hand and genuine admiration in his eyes. "Ms. Harrington, your turnaround of Riverside Lodge is the kind of story our readers love. Would you have time for an interview about the summit's remarkable success?" As we spoke about innovative hospitality approaches and authentic luxury experiences, I was acutely aware of my parents hovering nearby, straining to hear every word. They caught every detail as I described my journey, including how being passed over for the CEO position had ultimately motivated me to build something entirely my own. "Sometimes the best success stories come from being underestimated," I said, purposely raising my voice just enough to carry. "Being overlooked forced me to prove my worth. Not just to others, but to myself." Marcus nodded enthusiastically. "That's exactly the angle we want. And I'll tell you confidentially, we're naming the Summit Best Boutique Hotel in the Rockies in our upcoming special issue." My heart skipped a beat as he continued, "The same issue will feature an analysis piece on traditional hotels struggling to adapt to changing luxury travel expectations. We've been studying Mountain Pine Lodge as our primary case study. When the magazine hit newsstands 3 weeks later, it was like a bombshell exploded in our small town. The glossy cover featured the summit at sunrise, the mountains reflected perfectly in our infinity pool. Inside, an 8-page spread detailed our success story alongside stunning photography. Anyone who said I was bitter or vengeful had to recognize the reality. I managed to create something incredible through my know-how and grit, while Mountain Pine Lodge was going downhill because of poor leadership and a lack of willingness to change. The whispers didn't stop entirely, but they took on a different tone, grudging respect replacing petty criticism. Looking back on this transformative journey, I'm awash with conflicting emotions. The wound of my parents' dismissal still throbs sometimes, like an old injury that aches before a storm. The memory of how they brushed aside my contributions as if they were nothing more than expected filial duty can still steal my breath in unguarded moments. But the dominant feeling, the one that wakes me up energized each morning, is liberation. I've finally broken free from the crushing weight of seeking validation I was never going to receive. When I walk through the summit's light-filled lobby each morning, my heels clicking against the reclaimed wood floors I personally selected, I'm flooded with pride so intense it makes my chest tight. The space pulses. With vibrant energy, guests in casual luxury attire chatting excitedly about their upcoming adventures, staff moving with purpose and genuine smiles. The rich aroma of locally roasted coffee mingling with the crisp mountain air that sweeps in when the doors open. It's everything I envisioned during those long nights hunched over blueprints and budget projections. My team at the summit has become the family I chose rather than the one I was born into. Many, like Gabriella and Tessa, followed me from Mountain Pine Lodge because they recognized genuine leadership. Their loyalty and dedication humble me daily. Just yesterday, Gabriella joked that she finally feels like her 15 years of experience actually matter, and the way her eyes crinkled with genuine happiness made my own well up. For the first time, I feel seen, she told me, straightening the elegant uniform she'd helped design. You ask my opinion and actually listen to the answer. The simple truth of her words hit me like a physical force. We all just want to be valued for what we contribute. Outside of work, I've rediscovered parts of myself that had withered during my desperate quest for parental approval. I'm reconnecting with old college friends, making time for hiking the mountain trails I love, even dating again after years of putting my personal life on hold. The constant knot of anxiety in my stomach has finally loosened, allowing me to breathe fully for what feels like the first time in decades. Some townspeople who initially viewed me as the villain in a family drama have quietly changed their tune. Last week, Ellen Porter, who runs the local bookstore and initially canceled our monthly book club after the split, approached me at the farmer's market. What you've done with that old property is remarkable, she admitted, examining a bunch of organic kale with unnecessary intensity. My sister visited from Chicago and couldn't stop raving about her stay. You've really brought something special to this town. I've regained my sense of belonging in the community, and this time it's on my own terms. The summit has become a gathering place that extends beyond tourism. Our spacious event center has hosted everything from wedding receptions to community fundraisers. Last month's benefit for the local animal shelter raised over $50,000, with guests and their pets filling our carefully designed spaces with laughter and purpose. Organizing that event reminded me why I fell in love with hospitality. In the first place, it's never just been about luxury linens or perfectly executed service. It's about creating spaces where people connect, celebrate, and find comfort away from home. That fundamental purpose grounds me when industry pressures mount or competition intensifies. Despite this professional fulfillment, there are still quiet moments, usually late at night, when the day's demands have ceased, when I think about my family. The estrangement from Victor, Diana, and Nolan isn't something I wanted or expected. As hurt and angry as their actions made me, they're still the people who shaped my early years, for better or worse. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if they've ever truly understood the depth of sacrifice I made trying to save our family legacy. Do they recognize that my decision to compete wasn't born from spite but from self-preservation? I doubt it. The Harringtons have always excelled at rewriting history to suit their preferred narrative. Yet I've come to a profound realization: their approval, their understanding, even their love isn't something I need anymore to feel complete. My success, my happiness, my worth, these belong to me alone, not contingent on anyone else's validation. For decades, I existed in the shadow of their expectations and dismissals. But now I'm standing firmly in my own light, and it feels glorious. Exactly 23 days after the Colorado Luxury Hotels Awards, my phone lit up with my mother's name. Diana was reaching out. For the first time since our office confrontation, asking me to come to dinner, just the three of us. No Nolan. My stomach clenched as I read the text, emotions warring within me: curiosity, apprehension, a tiny flicker of hope I couldn't entirely extinguish. After careful consideration, I accepted. Not because I expected a genuine apology or meaningful change, but because I wanted closure to hear what they had to say. While standing securely in my new strength, the family home looked exactly as it always had, an expansive mountain residence filled with expensive furnishings that had once impressed me, but now seemed oddly impersonal compared to the warmth I'd created at the summit. Diana greeted me with a nervous smile, pearl earrings gleaming against her expertly highlighted hair. Victor hung back, fidgeting with his watch the way he always did when conversations turned uncomfortable. The dinner was painfully awkward. We made small talk about the strange warm weather, checked in on how I was doing, and carefully mentioned the summit's latest achievements. I could tell they were trying to muster the guts to get to the point of why they asked me over. Finally, after Diana cleared the dessert plates, Victor cleared his throat. "Elaine," he said, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant, "we wanted to tell you that we're proud of what you've accomplished." Diana quickly jumped in. "We know we haven't always shown it properly, but we do recognize how much work you've put into the summit. It's truly remarkable what you've created." I waited, feeling strangely detached, as if observing the scene from a distance. Their words, which I had once desperately craved, landed flat against my newfound independence. Too little, too late, too obviously prompted by necessity rather than genuine realization. "Thank you," I replied simply, taking a small sip of wine. Diana exchanged a glance with Victor before continuing. "The thing is, Nolan is struggling more than we expected. The hotel isn't doing well at all. The bank is making threats, and bookings are down almost 60%. Victor leaned forward, his voice taking on that persuasive tone he used in business negotiations. "We were wondering if you might consider helping him learn the basics. Not coming back, of course, but perhaps guiding him, sharing some of your expertise. For the family's sake." For a moment, I said nothing. I let their request hang in the air while I studied them both, really looked at them as the flawed, human individuals they were. Diana's manicured fingers nervously twisting her wine stem, knuckles white from tension. Victor staring down at the tablecloth as if it might offer salvation. "I offered to help a year ago," I finally responded, my voice calm but resolute. "I sacrificed my career, my savings, and my home in Chicago to save Mountain Pine Lodge. You had my expertise at your fingertips, along with 20 years of proven success in this industry. You chose to put Nolan in charge despite knowing he had no relevant experience or training. You didn't want my leadership then." I set my napkin beside my plate with deliberate care. "Now that things have fallen apart exactly as I predicted, you're asking me to step in and fix it? I'm sorry, but I can't do that." Diana's mouth opened in protest, but I raised my hand gently, cutting her off before she could launch into emotional manipulation. "I'll give you advice if you want it," I conceded. "I can recommend strategies, vendors, even training programs for the staff. But I'm not coming back to repair what Nolan has broken through inexperience and ego. That's not my responsibility anymore." They sat stunned, clearly unaccustomed to such firm boundaries from me. Victor eventually muttered something about understanding my position, but the disappointment etched across his face revealed his true feelings. Diana looked like she wanted to argue further. 20 years of getting her way through persistence had trained her well, but remarkably, she remained silent. As I drove home that night, the mountain air crisped through my slightly opened window. I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, the final shackle of familial obligation falling away. For the first time, I had looked my parents in the eye and refused to sacrifice my well-being for their comfort. I had prioritized my own needs without apology or explanation. The road ahead curved gently through the darkened forests, and I smiled to myself, recognizing that while the path forward might have its own challenges, I would face them on my own terms, free from the burden of seeking approval. I would never receive invalidation I no longer needed. Driving home that night, I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. My chest expanded with each breath, as if physical weight had been lifted from my body. Setting those boundaries with my parents wasn't easy, my hands had trembled slightly. as I spoke the words, but it was absolutely necessary. For once, I wasn't contorting myself into impossible shapes to earn Victor and Diana's approval or scrambling to clean up Nolan's expensive messes. I was finally choosing myself, my happiness, and my future without apology. Over the next few weeks, I noticed a profound shift in how I carried myself. That single act of saying no to my parents unlocked something fundamental within me. I stopped over-explaining my business decisions to board members who lacked my expertise. I quit justifying my personal choices to acquaintances who hadn't earned that level of intimacy. When the mayor's wife made a passive-aggressive comment about my family situation at a charity luncheon, I simply smiled and walked away instead of launching into a defensive explanation. I found myself evaluating all my relationships with new clarity. Some friendships that had hung on through obligation alone were gently released, creating space for connections that actually nourished me. I began having weekly hiking dates with Elena, my college roommate who'd moved to Boulder years ago. Our conversations on mountain trails, breathing in the pine-scented air, restored something essential in my spirit. At the summit, we hit milestone after milestone. Our occupancy rates soared to 92%, the highest in the region, while maintaining premium pricing. The spa expansion I'd gambled on was booked solid 3 weeks in advance. Most surprising were the inquiries from other boutique hotel owners across Colorado, asking if I would consider consulting on their properties. A small but meaningful vindication of my expertise. Mountain Pine Lodge continued its decline, though my industry contacts mentioned they'd finally hired a professional hospitality consultant from Denver. Too little, too late. But I found I could wish them well without the bitter aftertaste such thoughts once carried. Nolan and I barely spoke, and surprisingly, I was completely at peace with that. He never apologized or acknowledged what had happened between us. But I no longer needed that closure from him. His bitterness and resentment were his burdens to carry, not mine. Through mutual friends, I heard he was considering moving to Los Angeles to explore opportunities in the entertainment industry. A classic Nolan pivot away from failure rather than facing it. The summit had become the living embodiment of everything I'd worked for, my resilience when faced with rejection, my vision when others couldn't see possibilities, my hard-earned independence. As the hotel flourished, attracting glowing reviews and industry recognition, I found myself flourishing alongside it. One crisp morning in early spring, I stood in the summit's soaring lobby, watching as sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The light cast a golden glow across the sustainable wood furnishings and hand-woven textiles I'd sourced from local artisans. A family walked past, parents laughing as their children excitedly plotted their day's adventure on the trail maps we provided. Nearby, Tessa expertly handed a couple their customized itinerary for a snowshoe hike, complete with recommendations for viewpoints where they could capture perfect photos. The scene unfolded with a harmonious efficiency that only comes from excellent systems and genuine care, exactly what I'd envisioned during those long nights poring over renovation plans. My throat tightened with unexpected emotion. It hit me then, with startling clarity, how far I had traveled, not just professionally but personally. For decades, I'd measured my worth through my parents' eyes, desperately seeking their recognition and approval. Every achievement had been filtered through the question, will this finally be enough to make them see me? But standing there, watching my vision function beautifully around me, I realized I didn't need their validation anymore. What I had created wasn't just a luxury hotel, it was a real demonstration of my talents, my judgment, and my significance. The journey had been brutally hard at times, letting go of the stubborn hope that my family would suddenly change and recognize my value had been painful, like excising a wound that had never properly healed. But that release had also freed me. I no longer felt shackled by the weight of their expectations or crushed by their dismissal. Instead, I felt something I hadn't fully experienced before, genuine pride. Pride in the beautiful space I'd created, pride in the exceptional team I'd assembled. Pride in the woman who had finally learned to stand firmly in her own power. Each morning, I woke up excited about the day ahead. No longer dreading family dynamics or fighting for recognition. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was absolutely thriving. 6 months later, I stood backstage at the Regional Hospitality Excellence Awards, smoothing down my midnight blue gown as the Master of Ceremonies began announcing the nominees for Boutique Hotel of the Year. This prestigious industry recognition was the kind of event I had once dreamed of attending while reading hospitality journals. In my Chicago apartment, the ballroom buzzed with excitement, filled with industry leaders, travel journalists, and hotel owners from across 3 states. My heart raced as they described each nominee's achievements. Through a gap in the curtains, I caught a glimpse of Victor and Diana seated toward the back of the room. Their unexpected presence sent a jolt through me. Their faces remained carefully composed, but I could sense the weight of what this moment represented for all of us. They were dressed impeccably as always, Victor in a perfectly tailored suit, Diana's silver hair styled elegantly, but they looked somehow diminished, as if the strain of the past year had physically reduced them. And the winner of Boutique Hotel of the Year is... The presenter paused dramatically, building tension in the room. The summit, Aspen, Colorado. The room erupted in enthusiastic applause. My team, seated at 2 front tables, leapt to their feet with genuine excitement. Gabriella whistled loudly with her fingers, something she'd taught herself as a teenager in East Los Angeles. Their faces shone with shared pride as I walked toward the stage, my heart pounding against my ribs. As I accepted the heavy crystal award, feeling its satisfying weight in my hands, I glanced toward my parents. Victor gave me a small, tight nod, the most acknowledgement he could muster. Diana's eyes glistened with tears she wouldn't allow to fall. It wasn't the apology they would never give, but it was recognition, silent acknowledgement that I had succeeded despite their lack of faith in me. After decades of seeking their approval, this small gesture should have felt monumental. But instead it registered as just a footnote to the evening. My brief acceptance speech thanked my dedicated team and our loyal guests, making no reference to family legacy or past struggles. Those battles no longer defined me. After the ceremony, I joined my team for champagne and celebration. My parents slipped out without approaching, and I made no move toward them. This victory belonged to the people who had actually contributed to it, my staff, who had taken a chance following me to a new venture, the local artisans who had created custom pieces for our spaces, the guests who had trusted us with their precious vacation time. As I raised a glass with Gabriella, Tessa, and the rest of my team, surrounded by their genuine joy and shared pride, I felt truly free, liberated from the need for parental approval, released from the shadows of Nolan's preferential treatment, independent from the weight of family expectations that had constrained me for so long. Success was no longer about proving my parents wrong or earning their belated recognition. It was about proving to myself that I was capable, deserving, and more than enough on my own terms. As I toasted my team, the bubbles in the champagne sparkled in the light. To us creating something fantastic together, I said, my voice strong and clear. Their faces, diverse in age and background but united in purpose, beamed back at me with authentic connection and shared achievement. In that perfect moment, with the award gleaming under the lights, and surrounded by people who truly saw and valued me, I knew I'd finally found something more precious than approval or recognition. I'd found peace.
Lucia, at 28, feels overlooked in her family, especially compared to her younger sister, Amira. Unlike Amira, who attends a prestigious university, Lucia only finished high school and now works as a web designer. Growing up in a rural town with her family, she always sensed a difference in how her parents treated them. Amira, the family favorite, received abundant attention and expensive gifts, while Lucia's birthdays close to Christmas, were often combined with the holiday, leaving her with a single, usually practical gift. Their parents consistently attended Amira's soccer games, yet Lucia recalls that they never made it to her tennis matches, even her last one in middle school. This disparity in parental support left Lucia feeling sidelined. However, Amira often stood up for her, highlighting Lucia's strengths and achievements, which brought some comfort. Sadly, their grandparents, who saw the unequal treatment and defended Lucia, passed away by the time she finished high school. This loss only deepened the family's emotional divide. Over time, Amira also faced criticism from their mother for supporting Lucia, leading her to withdraw her support gradually. Despite these challenges, Amira thrived in sports and academics, fully supported by their parents, while Lucia felt increasingly isolated. The family's financial struggles, revealed after their grandparents' deaths, added another layer of stress, making their home a challenging environment for both sisters. Lucia longs for recognition and equality within her family, reflecting on the complexities of sibling dynamics and parental favoritism. Despite my aspirations to pursue a degree in design at university, circumstances led me to forego higher education immediately after high school. Instead, I entered the workforce and secured an office position at a design company that specialized in creating websites for women-focused services, such as hair and nail salons. The job was not close to home, but it provided a crucial gateway into the world of design, a field I was passionate about. Driven by a strong desire to deepen my knowledge, I seized every opportunity to learn by assisting the professional designers at my workplace. While the learning curve was steep, it only fueled my determination to succeed. Gradually, my efforts began to pay off as I transitioned from an eager learner to an integral part of the design team. Over the years, my commitment did not go unnoticed. I became a respected web designer, and my colleagues began to share valuable resources and connections with me. This support was instrumental in my professional development, and 5 years into my career, I was entrusted with significant projects. 7 years after my initial foray into the workforce, my life took another turn when I learned my sister Amira was preparing for university entrance exams. Aiming for a prestigious medical school, Amira's dedication to her studies was undeniable. Recalling our childhood, where she had always been a supportive figure, I felt compelled to support her in her academic pursuits. A few months later, Amira's hard work paid off as she gained admission to her first-choice medical school. I was thrilled for her and offered my congratulations. However, she shared a concern about a suggested donation to the private medical school. Although it wasn't mandatory, our parents feared the social stigma of appearing unable to contribute. This brought a new challenge for us to navigate together, reinforcing the bond and mutual support that had always defined our relationship. Despite the high costs of living expenses and tuition, Amira mentioned she intended to manage her living costs through part-time work. However, the demanding nature of medical school made me worry about her ability to balance work and intense studies. I knew she would struggle with the workload, and although I wanted to help with the donation, our family's financial situation was already stretched thin. My father, a white-collar worker, and my mother, who worked only 3 days a week, found it challenging to support the hefty fees of a private medical university. To my surprise, instead of directly asking, my parents had Amira approach me for financial help. Despite my reservations about how they handled the situation, I chose to support my sister by covering the donation and other necessary entrance fees. Amira then moved into an apartment near her university, not too far from where I lived, starting her new chapter. I hoped she would feel she could rely on me whenever needed. However, as she got absorbed into her college life, her responses to me grew shorter. She would occasionally message me with requests like, "I want to eat this," or "I need this. Please buy it for me." And I would fulfill these small needs, helping in ways our parents could not. We sometimes had meals together, but even then, Amira seemed distant, often preoccupied with her smartphone rather than engaging in conversation. Despite my efforts to maintain a light and supportive atmosphere, Amira's responses left me feeling confused and somewhat hurt. She had become colder towards me, and even our casual meals felt strained. One evening, trying to lighten the mood, I mentioned our parents optimistically, suggesting that they really cared about her well-being. Amira looked at me sharply and responded dismissively, highlighting the difference in our educational paths and societal values placed on our professions. Her words were cutting. Of course, a medical student like me and a high school graduate designer like you are incomparable. No one cares about a job that doesn't require qualifications like yours. Her blunt dismissal of my career as a designer stung deeply. She argued that being a designer was just a title and that anyone could create a website if they tried. Her suggestion that my job was less valuable because it did not require a formal qualification was harsh and made me feel undervalued. Despite her remarks, I knew the creativity and skill involved in my work, even if it was not recognized with formal credentials. Navigating the complexities of sibling relationships and family expectations can be tough, especially when one is seen as an underachiever. For someone like me who didn't go to college and pursued a different path, these challenges are all too real. Amira, on the other hand, attends a prestigious university and is often praised for her bright future in medicine. During one of our rare outings, which she admitted was at the behest of our parents, she couldn't help but make a biting remark. "Lucia, it's tough for someone without a degree. Dad and Mom often remind me that I'm destined for great things, but they think you're a disappointment. They told me to make sure you don't slip further. A future doctor should look out for her sister." This wasn't the sister I grew up with. These words echoed the harsh comparisons our parents had always drawn between us. Amira was the smart and dependable one. I was labeled as clumsy and incapable. The sting of those labels was as sharp as ever, suffocating me to the point where I could hardly speak, my head spinning with the weight of lifelong criticisms. Seeing my reaction, Amira misinterpreted my silence for sadness, offered a faint smile, and left, saying she was headed home. Since moving out and experiencing the freedom of living independently, Amira seemed to transform into someone shaped by the exceptional peers around her and the constant praise from her parents. If they repeatedly affirmed her brilliance, it was no wonder she believed it without question, adopting their disdainful attitude towards me as well. As the year drew to a close, our family tradition of returning home for the holidays brought us back together. Amira, immersed in her demanding university schedule, hadn't visited home since starting her studies. Consequently, our parents' attention was solely on her. They hardly noticed me. When we arrived, the house was brimming with celebration for Amira, steak, pizza, and a gathering of neighbors, relatives, and even her local classmates who came to join the festivities. Amira thrived in the limelight, openly boasting about her life at the prestigious university. "Mom keeps asking me to visit more often," she told everyone, reveling in the admiration. Such moments made it clear how different our worlds were, and how much I was overshadowed by the expectations and achievements of my sister. Yet, despite the coldness and the challenges, I continued to find my way, carving out a space where I could be proud of who I was, even if it wasn't acknowledged at home. Being a student at one of the most challenging medical schools clearly means that studying can be quite demanding. As a student, my schedule is packed with numerous team projects. It's impossible to just set them aside for some relaxation at home. Whenever any issue arises, my phone buzzes nonstop, which really adds to my stress. One day, seeking a brief escape, I pretended to be busy cooking in the kitchen and discreetly slipped away. Despite my efforts, I could still hear Amira boasting loudly enough that even our relatives and neighbors couldn't ignore her words. Her boasting might not have been too bothersome at a family gathering, but to outsiders, it likely came off as distasteful. During one such event, as I tried to lighten the mood by offering some wine, an elderly neighbor attempted to steer the conversation toward me and my career in design. However, Amira, along with my parents, quickly dismissed my achievements. They pointed out that I hadn't attended college and labeled me a disappointment, especially when compared to my sister. This comment stung, as many in the room had chosen paths similar to mine, prioritizing family or direct work experience over formal education. Feeling increasingly out of place, I attempted to leave quietly, but Amira called me out, smugly highlighting her academic successes and questioning my frequent visits home despite my apparent lack of ambition. Her words, followed by laughter from our parents, felt like a sharp jab. It was clear they thought little of me. Anger welled up inside me, and at that moment, I resolved not to return the following year. As I announced my decision to never come back, I could sense the room's mood shift. Concern flickered across the faces of relatives and neighbors. Ignoring the hurtful comments, I collected my belongings. I knew then that distancing myself from this toxic environment was necessary for my well-being. As I left, Amira and my parents seemed unfazed, even happy, as they waved goodbye. On my way to the station, I fought back the anger, the resolve hardening with each step. Going home had always been a burden, but now I felt nothing but a desire to move forward, away from the negativity that had clouded my visits. When I was first starting out as a web designer, it was easier to keep some distance from my parents by citing my studies as a reason for my busy schedule. But as my career progressed and I became more established, I found it increasingly difficult to maintain that distance. Despite the complexities of our relationship, I realized that my parents did try to raise us well in their own way. Amira, still a university student and considerably younger, likely didn't grasp the challenges of working in the professional world. She was celebrated as a prodigy for her academic talents, while I often felt dismissed and underestimated by our family. Amid these tensions and childish squabbles, I grew angry and deeply disappointed. It became clear that if I valued my career and self-respect, I couldn't continue this fraught relationship with my parents. This realization led me to make the difficult decision to cut ties with my family. Several months later, out of the blue, Amira called me. She kept sending messages, urging me to pick up. I wasn't blocking her, so I eventually took her call. She asked somewhat urgently, "Did you pay my tuition?" I replied calmly, "I covered the initial fees, including the entrance fee and a donation when you first enrolled. What about this year's tuition? The university is asking for it urgently." Amira seemed taken aback. I had indeed drained my savings to support her significantly in the beginning, covering various initial costs, but I hadn't planned for ongoing expenses. Thus, the tuition for subsequent years remained unpaid. And then there was the incident at the end of last year. It was astonishing that, after explicitly telling me not to come home, they would now ask me to contribute financially. "You know I paid what was asked initially to support you," I reminded her. "Didn't Mom and Dad choose an out-of-state private university because they could handle the expenses? Or was it without considering the financial implications?" Amira hesitated, then admitted, "It's not just about tuition. I have other expenses because of my social circle. Mom and Dad managed those but now can't afford the tuition. They told me to ask you." The reason I could even consider helping Amira initially was due to my professional growth. Having moved to a major design company, my skills were recognized and my salary had increased significantly. This advancement allowed me some financial flexibility, but the demands of my job also grew. As Amira and I talked, I felt a mixture of frustration and sympathy. Supporting her seemed right at the time, but with the family dynamics becoming increasingly toxic, I had to reconsider whether continuing this financial aid under such conditions was feasible or healthy for either of us. I had always been prudent with my finances, saving a substantial portion of my salary and bonuses, which allowed my savings to accumulate significantly. My parents were aware of my job change and, perhaps presumptuously, expected me to financially support Amira's education. As my capacity to contribute financially became apparent, it seemed they had diverted the funds earmarked for Amira's tuition to fund her leisure activities instead. Although initially unaware, once I realized this, my willingness to forgive and continue supporting financially dwindled. Supporting Amira's tuition would not have been a burden in itself, but I chose to deny her request. A few days later, my parents reached out, demanding that I cover the tuition payments. Their urgent and accusatory tone only deepened my resolve. It became painfully clear that they valued my financial contribution more than my presence as a family member. I could not accept being taken for granted and dismissed without any real dialogue. Amira's frequent calls could have softened my stance had they included a sincere apology. Instead, her pleas remained self-centered, focused only on the urgency of her needing the tuition to avoid expulsion. Her messages claimed that scholarships and part-time jobs wouldn't suffice to keep her enrolled and implored me to think of her potential academic ruin as something I should want to prevent. "I'll definitely pay you back once I start working. Please help me as a family," she would say, but the voicemails lacked genuine remorse and seemed manipulative. Frustrated by these one-sided conversations, I saved those messages in a separate file for future reference and cleared everything else from my phone. I then sent Amira a final message and blocked her number. I couldn't justify maintaining ties with someone who respected me so little, even if we were family. This decisive action marked a new beginning for me, free from the familial obligations that had weighed heavily on my shoulders. I later learned from a relative that Amira managed to scrape together enough through scholarships and loans to pay for her second year's tuition. However, without further financial support from me for living expenses, she found herself compelled to take a part-time job. Balancing work with her studies proved too challenging. She struggled with her course load and eventually had to drop out of university 5 months later. Through all of this, I had been supporting not only her tuition, but also sending money home regularly. Cutting off these financial ties was difficult, but necessary for my peace of mind and financial stability, allowing me to step into a season of new beginnings unburdened by past obligations. Last year, I made the tough decision to stop sending money home, severing financial ties with my family. With my support withdrawn, my parents found themselves on shaky financial ground. Amira, who had dropped out of college due to financial constraints, returned home. Despite her academic prowess, the lack of funds made it impossible for her to consider enrolling in another university. Instead, she retreated into a reclusive lifestyle, spending her days playing video games and her nights often marked by outbursts of stress. A friend living nearby informed me that the sound of family arguments frequently filled the air. My parents, once doting on Amira, now seemed powerless to guide her. By chance, I saw my parents outside one day. They looked utterly worn out. Neighbors, perhaps feeling awkward, barely interacted with them anymore. The stress reached a peak when my father, on his way to work, groped a woman on the train. Caught by fellow passengers, he was handed over to the police. Although a settlement spared him from charges, the incident became known at his workplace, forcing him to resign. With no other income, my mother tried to find work, but her limited part-time job experience made it difficult to secure a position that paid well. Attempts by my parents to reach out to me through relatives continued, but their messages were self-serving and demanding. Eventually, even the relatives grew weary of their attitude and assured me they would manage without involving me, encouraging me not to worry. I have completely cut ties with my family and am now living a more stable and peaceful life. Meanwhile, I've heard that Amira and my unemployed father are increasingly isolated in our community. Rumors about my father's actions have spread, exacerbating their ostracism. My mother, overwhelmed by the situation, has disappeared, and no one seems to know her whereabouts. Left to their own devices, my father and Amira are almost living like vagrants. Had they maintained even minimal relationships with the neighbors, they might have found some support, but their past actions have left them virtually alone. As for me, I am thriving in my career as a designer. I've been chosen for a major project that promises to bring recognition to my work. This opportunity has also inspired me to chase a long-standing dream. I plan to take university entrance exams soon. With the project wrapping up and substantial savings at my disposal, I'm gearing up to study seriously. Additionally, I'm considering studying business management to prepare for possibly going independent in the future. Faced with these exciting challenges, my heart races with anticipation for what lies ahead. The contrast between my life's trajectory and that of my family starkly highlights the divergent paths we've taken, driven by the choices each of us has made. My name is Chloe, and for the past 20 years, I've been living quietly beside my twin sister Victoria. though it often felt more like living in her shadow. We were born on the same day, and to an outsider, we might look nearly identical. However, the similarities between us end just there. Victoria has always been the sun of our family, bright, energetic, and universally adored. In contrast, I've always related more to the moon, quiet, introspective, and often obscured by her radiance. Our parents, Ethan and Sophie, saw Victoria as the epitome of perfection. She shone in her academics, thrived in various clubs and societies, and had a magnetic personality that made her the center of attention wherever she went. As for me, I was often referred to as the other daughter. Not as brilliant, not as outgoing, not as flawless as Victoria. From a young age, I yearned desperately for our parents' attention. I pushed myself in my studies and even dabbled in sports, but no matter what I did, I couldn't step out of Victoria's shadow. The phrase, "Chloe, why can't you be more like Victoria?" became a recurring soundtrack in my life, each repetition chipping away at my heart. Victoria and I lived worlds apart, despite sharing the same home. Her world was vivid and full of adoration and friends, while mine felt dim, lonely, and filled with a deep longing. This contrast grew sharper in high school. Victoria soared as the student body president and a recipient of numerous awards. I, on the other hand, found solace in the art club, often tucked away in a corner sketching scenes from my imagination. Art became my refuge, the one place where I wasn't compared to anyone else. Yet, even my passion for art was met with indifference by our parents. Art? What future is there in that? My father often remarked, pointing out Victoria's path to medical school as the blueprint for a successful future. Every dismissal made me retreat further into myself, feeling both ashamed of my supposed shortcomings and resentful of their inability to appreciate who I was, not just who I wasn't. Victoria loved me, I never doubted that, but her attempts to bridge our gap sometimes only deepened it. Her words of comfort often felt patronizing, unintentionally reinforcing the differences between us. "It's okay, Chloe, you have other talents," she'd say, but I could always hear the unspoken but not as much as me lingering in the air. At our high school graduation, Victoria delivered a speech as the valedictorian. I watched from the audience, feeling invisible as our parents beamed at her with pride. Later, they threw a grand party to celebrate her achievements, and I retreated to my room to draw, unnoticed and unmissed. That night, as I lay in bed, the realization of having spent 20 years overshadowed by Victoria weighed heavily on me. The pain was suffocating, but within it, I found a spark of determination. No more living in shadows. No more conforming to expectations that felt alien to my true self. It was time to forge my path, to find value and meaning in my life on my terms. I vowed then to step into my light, no matter how daunting that might seem. This was the beginning of living my life, not as a secondary character in someone else's story, but as the protagonist of my own. At the time, I didn't realize how profound the decision I made that night would be, nor could I have predicted how it would unravel hidden aspects of our family dynamics. Just a week after graduation, our lives began veering in an unexpected direction. It was at a routine breakfast that my father, with a suddenness that caught us all off guard, stood to make an announcement. To celebrate Victoria's outstanding academic achievements, he declared with a proud smile, "We decided to take a family vacation to Florida." Victoria's reaction was a burst of joy, and my mother's eyes glistened with tears of pride. I, on the other hand, just absent-mindedly stirred my cereal, feeling detached from their excitement. Then, turning towards me, my father added, "Chloe, we need you to stay home and watch the house." At that moment, it felt as though time had ground to a halt. The joyous cheers from Victoria and the soft sobs from my mother seemed to fade into the background, leaving only my father's words echoing in my ears. House-sitting was all I could manage to muster. "Yes," my father replied nonchalantly. "Someone has to look after the house, right? Besides, this trip is a celebration for Victoria. You understand, right?" Understand? What was there to understand? I had graduated just like Victoria. I was also a part of this family. But in that moment, the stark reality that I was not truly seen as such hit me hard. I understand. I responded in a barely audible voice, my words heavy with unspoken hurt. That evening, as my family bustled around packing their suitcases, I retreated to my room and turned to my canvas. My brushstrokes were heavy, loaded with the weight of anger, sadness, and isolation I felt. As I painted, there was a knock at the door. Victoria entered, her voice tinged with concern. "Chloe, are you okay?" Without turning to face her, I replied, "Yeah, I'm fine. Have fun." Victoria hesitated, then softly added, "I'm sorry. I talked to Dad, but it's okay." I interrupted, not wanting to prolong the conversation or feel more diminished. "I'm fine. Go and enjoy your trip." She sighed, seemingly unsure of what else to say, and left the room. Although I appreciated that she had tried to speak to our father on my behalf, it ultimately didn't change anything. My presence, or lack thereof, seemed insignificant to them. The next morning, as my family prepared to leave, the house felt unnervingly silent. My mother embraced me briefly, murmuring, "Take care," while my father simply patted my shoulder without a word. Victoria gave me an apologetic look, but soon they were all gone. As the door closed behind them, the silence of the house enveloped me. For the first time, I was completely alone, left to navigate the solitude and the stark realization of where I stood within my family. This newfound isolation, though painful, sparked a resolve within me to pursue a path where I could be valued for who I am, not overshadowed by someone else's achievements. During that week alone, I experienced a peculiar blend of loneliness and liberation. For the first 3 days, I remained holed up in my room, my attention solely devoted to my drawing. Time seemed to dissolve around me. Meals were forgotten as I lost myself in the world of canvas and colors. On the 3rd day, I ventured outside, walking through the local park under a sprawling blue sky. I wondered, idly, if the sky in Florida was an even deeper shade of blue. But it was on the 4th morning that my ordinary solitude was interrupted by an unexpected visitor. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my reverie. I opened the door to find a woman whose face bore a striking resemblance to an older version of my mother. "Hello, Chloe," she greeted me with a warm smile. "I'm your mother's cousin, Lucy." I was taken aback. A cousin of my mother's? This was news to me. Lucy's presence was unexpected, yet there was a kindness in her eyes that made me step aside to let her in. As she entered the living room, her gaze quickly fell on the paintings I had hung on the walls. "These are wonderful," she exclaimed. "Did you draw these?" I nodded, a bit shyly admitting, "Yes, it's just a hobby." Lucy looked at me intently. "It's not just a hobby, Chloe. This is talent." Her words resonated within me, striking a chord that my parents' comments never had. Lucy began to ask about my paintings, the techniques I used, my sources of inspiration, and even my dreams for the future. Gradually, I found myself opening up more than I had in a long time. Talking to Lucy felt like conversing with a longtime friend. Her eyes sparkled with understanding and empathy. "Chloe," Lucy said earnestly, "you have a great talent. You should have the opportunity to develop it." She then reached into her wallet and pulled out a check. "This is for nurturing your talent," she said as she handed it to me. I was astounded when I saw the amount. $100,000. It seemed unreal. But "I can't accept this," I stammered, overwhelmed. Lucy's smile was gentle yet firm.
Take it.
"This is an investment in your future. I believe in you." Tears welled up in my eyes. For the first time in my life, someone not only recognized my talent but also believed in my potential. After Lucy left, I sat for a long time, staring at the check. The implications of accepting it were huge. It could change my life. Yet, with it came a swirl of anxiety. How would my parents react if they knew? What would Victoria think? Why had Lucy chosen this moment to step into my life and offer such a generous gift? These unanswered questions lingered in my mind, but one thing was clear: a significant change was on the horizon. When my family returned from Florida, I was gripped by a mix of excitement and dread. How would I explain Lucy's visit and the check? Was there even a need to explain? As I heard the front door open and their cheerful voices filled the space, the reality of the moment hit me. Victoria entered first, her face sun-kissed and beaming. "Chloe, I'm back," she exclaimed, moving in for a hug. I hesitated, stepping back slightly, which caused a fleeting shadow of confusion to cross her face. However, she quickly recovered with her usual bright smile. Our parents followed, laden with luggage, my mother appearing particularly weary. At that moment, the dynamics of our family, the contrast between us, and the potential impact of Lucy's gift loomed large, shaping the next chapter of my life in ways I had yet to fully understand. As my family returned home, their faces glowing with the residual joy of their trip, my father maintained his usual composed demeanor. "Was everything okay at home?" he asked, his voice carrying a tone of formal concern. "Everything was fine," I responded, my tone more dismissive than intended. "Good," he nodded, and just like that, the topic was closed. As they unpacked, laughter and stories filled the air, their shared memories of Florida creating a bubble of happiness from which I felt utterly excluded. I observed them from a distance, my sense of alienation growing stronger. At dinner, while they continued to relive their adventures, I remained silent, my thoughts swirling with doubts about my place in this family. However, the semblance of peace was shattered when my mother, sifting through a pile of mail, suddenly raised her voice. "What's this?" She held up a check, confusion and curiosity etched on her face. My heart skipped a beat. I had completely forgotten about Lucy's check in the chaos of their return. My father took the check, his eyes widening as he read the amount. $100,000. Addressed to Chloe? What is this all about? The room's atmosphere turned icy in an instant. Victoria's face registered shock and suspicion flickered in our parents' eyes. Taking a deep breath, I began to explain about Lucy's unexpected visit, how she admired my paintings, and her belief in my talent which led her to give me the check to support my artistic pursuits. After my explanation, a heavy silence hung over the room. It seemed to stretch endlessly until Victoria finally spoke, her voice tinged with a sharpness I hadn't expected. "Isn't that unfair, to receive such a large sum from a stranger while we were away?" I was stunned by her words, her tone clearly jealous. "Victoria," I replied quietly, trying to maintain my composure, "you received the gift of a trip to Florida. This is a gift for me." "But it's not just yours," Victoria shot back, her voice rising. "We're twins, aren't we? Shouldn't we share everything?" Anger welled up inside me. "Share? You've monopolized everything so far, our parents' love, attention, and admiration. This time, it's mine." "Chloe," my father interjected sharply. "What's with that attitude?" "Apologize to Victoria." At that moment, something inside me snapped. Years of suppressed emotions came flooding out. "Apologize? Me?" I stood up, my voice trembling with pent-up frustration. Who should be apologizing? Who has always disregarded me, cherished only Victoria, never recognized my talent, and continued to ignore my existence? My outburst left my parents staring in surprise, and Victoria looked on the verge of tears. "You all," I continued, my voice gaining strength, "have you ever truly loved me, or have I just been Victoria's shadow to you?" My mother opened her mouth to speak, possibly to soothe the tension, but the air was already thick with revelations and raw emotions, signaling a turning point in our family dynamics. This confrontation, though painful, was a necessary eruption of truths long buried under the surface of our seemingly perfect family facade. But I cut her off. "That's enough. I can no longer be part of a family like this." With those words, I ran to my room, my emotions overwhelming me. Once inside, I closed the door, collapsed onto my bed, and let the tears I had held back for so long flow freely. After some time, I heard a knock at the door. It was Victoria, her voice soft and shaky. "Chloe, can we talk?" I hesitated, still raw from our earlier confrontation, but eventually, I opened the door. Victoria stood there, her eyes red from crying. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I've been struggling too." I waited, letting her find the words she needed. "The expectations our parents set for us are too heavy, but I was envious of you. You seem to live so freely." Her confession took me by surprise. It had never occurred to me that Victoria could feel envious of my life. "We really didn't understand each other," I murmured. Victoria nodded and stepped closer, then suddenly, she hugged me. "Can't we start over?" she whispered. "As real sisters?" I hugged her back and quietly nodded, feeling the years of misunderstandings and jealousy begin to wash away with our tears. However, the poignant moment of reconciliation was short-lived. The next day at breakfast, our father began with a grave expression that immediately set us on edge. "Chloe, Victoria, there's something I need to tell you," he said cautiously. "About the woman yesterday, Lucy." He paused, searching for the right words. "The truth is, she is your real mother." The room seemed to freeze. Victoria and I stiffened, the words striking us like a bolt of lightning. "What do you mean?" Victoria asked, her voice trembling. Our mother, who had raised us, began to explain through her tears. "She and Lucy are sisters. Lucy became pregnant while unmarried when you were conceived. To protect the family's reputation, they decided to have you adopted by us." "But why now?" I managed to stammer out. "Lucy was recently diagnosed with a serious illness," she explained. "She wanted you to know the truth." This revelation turned our world upside down. Everything we had believed about ourselves and our family collapsed in an instant. I stood up, needing air, and staggered out of the room. Victoria followed, and together we went out to the garden, sitting silently side by side. As we sat there, a mix of indescribable emotions swirling within us, Victoria finally spoke. "Chloe," she said quietly, "what should we do now?" I let out a deep breath. "Honestly, I don't know. But there's one thing I'm sure of."
"What's that?" she asked.
"That we have each other." Victoria gave a small smile and squeezed my hand. In that moment, I felt that we truly became sisters, not just by blood but connected by heart, bound together through shared trials and revelations. This newfound bond, forged in the most unexpected circumstances, seemed to promise that whatever lay ahead, we would face it together. In the weeks following the shocking revelation about our true parentage, our home transformed into an arena of quiet upheaval. On the surface, life proceeded as usual, but beneath the routine, Victoria and I were bridging the gap that had long separated us. We spent more hours together than ever, unraveling years of misunderstandings and sharing parts of our lives previously hidden from each other. One afternoon, Victoria knocked on my door. "Chloe," she began, a curious tone in her voice, "I want to see more of your paintings." I hesitated at first, but then I opened my sketchbook to her eager eyes. She pored over each page with a focused intensity. "This is amazing," she exclaimed. "Why didn't you show me these sooner?" I shrugged, a mix of resignation and old reflexes flaring up. "I thought no one would be interested." Victoria's face fell slightly, tinged with regret. "I'm sorry, I never noticed your talent either." Her acknowledgement felt like a balm to the old wounds of neglect. Finally, someone recognized the passion that I had kept to myself. Meanwhile, our relationship with our adoptive parents, Ethan and Sophie, remained strained. They were remorseful, repeatedly expressing regret over their previous indifference towards me. However, the deep-seated feelings of being overlooked in favor of Victoria weren't easily dismissed. One evening after dinner, Ethan approached me tentatively. "Chloe, about your paintings, could I see your work, if you don't mind?" His voice held a note of earnest pleading. "Why are you interested in my paintings now?" I asked, my voice steady, but filled with years of accumulated hurt. Ethan sighed deeply, the weight of his errors seeming to bear down on him. "We made many mistakes, and overlooking your talent was one of them," he admitted. I thought it might not be too late to start. His regret appeared genuine, but my heart was still guarded. "I'll think about it," I replied and retreated to my room. That night, I wrestled with my feelings, debating whether I could ever forgive Ethan and Sophie and possibly rebuild our relationship. Despite the complexities of my feelings toward my adoptive parents, one thing became crystal clear. I was no longer willing to live in anyone's shadow. My life was my own to shape. The following day, I invited Victoria on a special outing. Our destination? Lucy's house, our biological mother's home. As we rang the doorbell, we held each other's hands tightly, a silent pact of mutual support. The door swung open, and there stood Lucy, tears immediately springing to her eyes. "Chloe, Victoria," she said, her voice quivering with emotion. "Thank you for coming." We stepped forward and embraced her, a flood of complex emotions washing over us. Though words were scarce, the hug spoke volumes. Healing the years of separation and filling the void of missed connections would take time, but as we stood there, connected by an unspoken bond, it felt like the first step towards mending the fragmented parts of our shared history. As we crossed the threshold into Lucy's home, a realm where her soul was laid bare on canvas walls, the ambience of creativity enveloped us. She was an artist just like me. The sight of her paintings, which captured so much emotion and color, immediately drew us in. Settling into the familiar comfort of her living room, we were surrounded by the vibrant evidence of her life's passion. Lucy's voice trembled as she began to recount her past. "When you were conceived, I was young and overwhelmed. I didn't believe I could provide you with the life you deserved." Victoria and I listened in silence, absorbing the weight of her words. Lucy spoke of the choices she made, the life she led afterward, and how she had always kept a watchful eye on us from afar. "But my decision must have hurt you," she said, her eyes glistening with tears as she turned towards me. "Especially you, Chloe." "I'm so sorry." Taking a deep breath, I responded, "Lucy, no, Mom. We've faced many challenges, but I appreciate that you recognized my talent and finally shared the truth with us." Victoria nodded in agreement, adding, "We have time now to get to know each other. We can take it slow." Relief washed over Lucy's face as she embraced us once more, a gesture that felt like it was mending years of separation with each second. From that day forward, Victoria and I began visiting Lucy regularly. She taught us painting techniques and shared stories of her life, and gradually, we deepened our bond. It was a new chapter of learning and understanding, of growing closer, not just as a family, but as artists sharing a deep-rooted passion. However, our relationship with Ethan and Sophie remained fraught with complexity. Despite their attempts to reconnect and make amends, the weight of past years was heavy, and simple resolutions seemed beyond reach. One day, Sophie came to my room, her voice laden with anxiety. "Chloe, can we talk?" she asked. I hesitated but opened the door. She entered and paused, her eyes roaming over my paintings. After a moment, she began to cry. "I'm sorry, Chloe," she sobbed. "I overlooked your talent, ignored your feelings. I was not the mother you needed." I sat beside her, my mind a tumult of emotions but my voice calm. "I wasn't perfect either," I admitted. "But what matters is what we do from here." Sophie looked at me, a flicker of hope in her eyes. "You're right. Can we start over?" However, the scars were deep. I appreciated her desire to make amends, but the years of feeling unvalued and overshadowed couldn't be easily forgotten. Forgiveness, for now, felt out of reach. The next day, I made a significant decision. Gathering Ethan, Sophie, and Victoria together, I said, "I think it's time for me to leave this house." The room fell into a stunned silence. When Ethan and Sophie began to object, trying to persuade me to stay, I knew they didn't fully understand my need for space, to heal, to grow, and to explore my identity away from the shadows of the past. Leaving was not an act of abandonment, but an essential step toward finding my path, a path where I could forge an identity not defined by comparison or obscured by another's brilliance. This was my chance to discover who Chloe was, on my terms, at my pace. My decision was firm, and a few days later, as I was preparing to leave the house, I shared my plans with Victoria. "I'm going to art college," I announced, a mix of nervousness and excitement in my voice. Her response was immediate and supportive. "You should definitely pursue your talent. We'll support your decision all the way," she said, wrapping me in an enthusiastic hug. "Congratulations, big sister. You're going to be a fantastic artist." A few months later, I enrolled in an art college and began living on my own. The new environment of the campus was a breath of fresh air, a place where I could truly explore and express my artistic abilities without any reservations. Meanwhile, Victoria embarked on her journey, starting medical school as each of us pursued our passions. As time went on, my relationship with Lucy also grew stronger. She became an integral part of our lives, her presence a constant source of encouragement and inspiration. One day, my artwork was featured at a university exhibition. To my surprise and delight, both Victoria and Lucy came to see it. Watching them standing in front of my paintings visibly moved me and filled my heart with warmth and a profound sense of belonging. I realized then that despite the complexities and the scars, this was my family. The exhibition was more than just a display of my work. It was a testament to the journey we had all undertaken together. The imperfections and challenges of our past were part of us, but they did not define us. By embracing our reality and moving forward, we were building something stronger. Victoria came up beside me and took my hand, her presence reassuring. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" she whispered. I smiled, feeling the truth of her words deep in my soul. "Yes, we have. But the real beginning starts now." In that moment, surrounded by my art and the two most important women in my life, I felt an overwhelming sense of clarity and purpose. The future was uncertain, but it was filled with possibilities, and I was ready to face it with courage and hope. This was not just a new chapter in my life. It was a fresh start for all of us, a chance to redefine what it meant to be a family and to support each other in our individual aspirations and dreams.